3, 2. Hello, I'm about to spotlight the official podcast of Grapple. I'm Benno.
I'm JP.
And I'm Matty.
And we're back for Spotlight. We're cursed, JP. We're doing a Monday again. This could end up badly. We've just been in the pre-show talking Gladiators, the Traitors finale, Jürgen Klopp. Our scran of the week. I think all the fun stuff's going to be on that side this week because it has been, the words of certain people, an amazing week in wrestling. Let's use amazing in its literal term, JP, for this last week, because I feel like that spotlight we did last Monday was about 6 years ago. It felt like, to be fair, it felt like 6 years ago last Tuesday morning. I was sat there as keeping an eye on the YouTube premiere as the Netflix news broke, and it was like, oh well, that spotlight's gone. It was just, it's been like, and it just carried on all week. That's just been the week it was. Bonus podcasts aplenty.
It was, and I know that those of you who managed to see the video of me talking about it as well, me at work with contact lenses in and a shirt and tie as well. It was trying not to swear too much because the room I was in. But yeah, you described it as an amazing week, and the literal definition of it is cause great surprise, astonishing. Yeah, it's been that kind of a week, and
I thought it was really good last week. I thought it
was a cracking show.
We did a bit of a, in the words of our friends at Voices of Wrestling, a spray all fields type of show. Got a bit of TNA in, got a bit of AEW in, bit of WWE in, bit of New Japan in. I don't know if anyone actually listened to it in the end because the news cycle took over. I was proud of us anyway, lads. I thought it was a cracking show, but can you believe that was last Monday? That's the thing, JP. We've committed to doing Tuesdays, and now 2 weeks in a row we've had to pivot to Mondays. This week more to make it newsworthy. You just know something's going to break in the morning, because this week just hasn't stopped. You filled in on the weekend show, Matty, did a cracking job on
brilliant job
as well, and covering some of the news and stuff. It's needed. You've knocked time out this weekend as well. It's needed all hands on deck. I could tell listening back to time, Matt, like that. I feel like that was good therapy for all four of you listening to watching that back. It was in the midst of it all, let's just not talk about wrestling for a few hours because that came out. Retro came out last week. It's been fucking busy, but yeah, I could tell that was a good one.
Oh, he's on mute.
You're on mute, Matt.
Sorry, still getting used to that. Yeah, we had a great time, didn't we? As Benno said there, I went straight from the weekend show right into time, so it was, it was much needed. And as always, JP, Liam just comes up with such a great collection. He finds some gems, doesn't he? Let's be honest.
Oh, it was an absolute belter. Fucking loved it for this one. This is 1992, so for me and Gareth, it was just oh Jesus, it's our early teens. Although sounding like his teens, like I said, he was like fucking Gareth Barrymore, wasn't it? And I mean Drew, not Michael, in the sense that he was on the fucking tear as a child. And
I was shocked.
He was. I at least waited another year to go fully on the tear as a child. But it's the way things were in the early 90s. It's January 92. Yeah. And so much stuff, like the wild stuff of TV,
all
of the pillars are incredible. Even if I had to talk about Arsenal versus Wrexham, which fucking hurt me, there's some bad memories of that day in particular. But it was there was the Bully versus Blobby conversation. I think we spoke about a Bully from Bullseye and Freddy Krueger limited edition Bully to have that was me. Sorry.
You got that in the end. That I couldn't not picture Jim Bowen in Freddy Krueger's outfit, and then Robert Englund hosting Bullseye. That's the combos we have on this show, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, if you could have a Tony Green dressed up as Freddy Krueger. Stood there at the side. The franchise Ron Dixon is a phrase that's going to live with me for a very, very.
I was gone off that one. I was gone off that. Unbelievable. When you compared Brookside was the ECW of the soaps, I thought that was though. It was.
Yeah.
What a perfect analogy.
Adult themes, kind of their brand works, doesn't it? You got EastEnders and Corrie as WCW and WWF. I can see it.
Adult themes, lesbian kiss, incest, bloke married on bloke buried in his patio, all sorts. They were doing that kind of that's they were doing loads of. I don't know if you call Barry Grant and Terry, whether or not is that some sort of Raven Tommy Dreamer style feud as well. They always had ongoing during the entirety of it. But yeah, the soaps. So it's like the Attitude Era of soaps. It's just big stars all over the place there as well. The TV bit, I have to say, of all of the pillars this month it
was loaded, wasn't it? It was loaded.
Absolutely fucking loaded. There's some classic telly on there as well, discussing blockbusters as well at the same time.
Gareth,
got some bullseye in. Games Master.
Noel's house party guy, was he? He wasn't into that back in the day, was he?
Oh yeah,
Generation thing, Matty again.
Yeah, it's gotta be. He hates Blobby. That's where it come from. He was bully over Blobby, wasn't he? So,
so would I be, in fairness.
Yeah.
I was loving the blockbuster section. I want to hear more like game show talk. I need to dig it out. I saw it on my Facebook memories. There's an episode of 15 to 1 that my granddad was on. I need to find out what year it was and make you do a time.
You need to get that, Benno.
So he's going to review. Or I'll give you the episode of Telly Addicts that my mum and my aunties were on with. Speaking of Noel, the photo's still on my auntie's wall to this day. The four of them on the couch with Noel Edmonds in the middle. I'll pull that out. Telly
Addicts, what a show!
And again, as I've said on the show before, like it was an awakening as a kid. I feel like it must have been like 91, 92 because I just assumed my mum was going to be live on the studio and I couldn't get my head around why she was on the telly and also sat on the couch. Everything was live back then, as we were talking about on the pre-show. Even the game shows in my book. But no, cracking episode of Time. It is out there for free. If you're listening to this or watching this, you can get it here as well. What's this? You and JP's supposed to bully using the dictionary to tot someone? Okay, missed that.
I think it was about bully turning heel. At some stage by like just twatting people with the dictionary if they got it wrong on the spelling rounds. What a show.
But yeah, Time was a cracker again. If you're listening to this or watching this, whenever you're listening or watching it, you will get Time. It's Hollyoaks the ROH of soaps. That could work. Ring of Hollyoaks. Took the baton from ECW. A lot of the same creative people working on the background. It works. Work rate ECW. Work rate Brookside.
Very indie roster. Very basketball hoops though, isn't it, Hollyoaks?
It is
a little bit. But anyway, yeah, if you want to hear that full chat, like I say, get that over there. Of course, Retro was put out on free release last weekend. Amidst all of this nonsense, that extra show slipped out as well. So there's a lot going on the feed there. You and Gareth chatting as well for Retro episode 3. But of In Your House Final Four, Matty, was on there too. So people can check that out too.
The Steve match from South Africa as the hidden gem, which I hope everyone has listened when and checked that match out because it's a good match. It's a very good, strictly wrestling match, Benno. That's what we get on there, Retro, of course. Professional wrestling, but at best form.
Professional podcast. That's what you get from Retro. So yeah, check all of that out. We'll have the Iron Claw Film Club coming this week as well. Me and Jake, listeners are going to be able to go to a premiere of that on Wednesday night. So yeah, we'll get that out just before the net closes in on January. It becomes February. We did promise we'll get it done in January, and it looks like that's going to be the case as well. So yeah, patreon.com/grapple, youtube.com/@grapple if you want to hear /watch that. But on that note, lads, we should get into the main stuff as we do have a lot to cover this week. And yeah, obviously, as I mentioned at the top, JP, you were off the weekend show this week, and Matty filled in, did the cracking job. We kind of covered in some detail kind of what we knew about the Vince McMahon situation at that point and the allegations, which of course we can give a bit of a recap on. Never doesn't at any point become any less Harrow and Whedon the more you kind of go into it. But yeah, we kind of talked about what we knew on Friday, and in typical fashion as what was happening last week. By the time Saturday morning came, I was actually asleep for once. I woke up to the news that the Vince was officially gone. So things did kind of move on quite swiftly over the weekend before the Rumble on Saturday. But yeah, I mean, obviously you covered a few of your thoughts, JP, on the news dump midweek last week as well. So we kind of got your early thoughts on it all as well. But yeah, what more can you say, JP, other than just one of the it's one of the biggest stories in wrestling, so we've got to cover it. And it's just, like I say, it never gets any easy to talk about or react to. And just you know, that as you've kind of put in our notes here, it's like, how fucked up was Vince McMahon? Well, we found out last week, and it just, you know, a story we kind of already felt like we knew got worse and worse as the week went on.
Yeah, it did. And I think at the time, and I have to say for you guys, the way that you covered it on the weekend show, given like there was so much kind of information that had piled in, particularly that day, was like incredible. And hats off to both of you, because, you know, when we're doing sort of wrestling criticism and analysis, that's not necessarily the area where, you know, you want to be really talking about with wrestling. And lo and behold, it's not really a surprise. And, you know, I asked the question there, you know, for all the patrons, you can see the run sheet that we're going through, and it was like, how truly fucked up is he? And I think we learned, like, I'd always thought he was amoral. I always thought that he was like a cruel man. I didn't think he was a good human being in any other way, shape, or form. These were like fundamentally evil things that he had done, and the level of it and the depravity is genuinely shocking. And I do not shock easily, but even I was like, oh my God, like the things that he was doing, it went well beyond like anything else that we had thought. It's like, how bad is this man? And it was almost like here we had this portrait of him. And what's I mean, the thing with this as well is that none of this is unexpected. It isn't. Like, none of the allegations are surprising. That's the kind of person he's always sort of shown himself to be. We just didn't know how bad it was. And he is now really, for me, he's the embodiment of everything that is sleazy and nasty about wrestling is summed up in this one human being on here as well. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and just say, like, for me, it's not only just like kind of what has happened and what we learned, it's all of the other stuff on the side of it. It's, you know, the other people involved who clearly knew all of this information. It's, you know, I suppose it's the scathing level of detail, because like what we didn't know on Friday when we first found out about this and we're talking about it was that, you know, there was these really that he was going to be gone. Like, I honestly on Friday was like, oh, we'll see what happens. Rumble's coming up. Like, is he gonna survive another weekend? How's the reaction gonna be? And we probably just should have seen it coming, because like I feel like even the Vince McMahon defenders, which unfortunately, if you're on Twitter, there's still some out there, despite everything we know, despite everything you can read in those reports, and it is all available. Like I say, on Friday, we were still digesting the information, you know, the full, legal reports, the full, even the full NDA is out there. And any decent human being would read that and would just react in horror, I think, as we all have. Not everyone is built like that. But even if you want to be one of those people who wants to be like, oh, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, or maybe TKO will weather this storm. I think maybe we did allude to it on Friday when me and Matt talked about it, but Vince's text messages were enough. I'm still reeling from that, from reading those. I'm reading from, reading not the way he texts, texts like a mix between a senile old man and a fucking horrible teenage boy. There's that side of it, but it's the content of it. That was enough. And it appears over the weekend like that has been enough. Even if you want to be one of those people who doesn't believe the rest of it, that should be enough for you to change the way you talk about Vince McMahon forever. And it was enough for, TKO to actually take action, JP. It's like, that maybe we should have just seen this coming. Maybe I didn't have the faith in TKO that, it was maybe earned with the way they deal with things. But yeah.
I think this is in some ways I'm not surprised from TKO, because it's something that's taken out of his hands. And the idea of him like sort of just trying to ride his way through it, as he has done with everything else throughout his entire life, simply because he is the gatekeeper to what would be the big money in wrestling. So therefore everyone has to kind of humor him in that way. Like, I'm trying to think, for some reason, when you mentioned about being like an evil, deranged teen, I just thought of him like Joffrey from Game of Thrones. It's this fucking like that kind of like just a horrible prick. But the thing about this with TKO's response in here, they've kind of got the easy get out because they realise themselves they're no fool. This is all about the share price. The idea of the morality of the victims, I have to say, because there are multiple victims who have been paid off, and I can only imagine what horror stories they have to tell, and they all deserve to have the justice, you know, which means taking Vince McMahon to task. But for TKO, I'm not surprised. This gives them, they've got the person to pin all of the evils of the past onto, and all of the cultural issues around that company, which we've known are there. And in some ways, like, you know, with like in relation to, say, speaking out, you could see, well, you know, it all comes from like the head of all of this, of somebody who is there as well, that he kind of permeates his way through the entirety of wrestling. And these kind of like horrible fucking people can be drawn to it because they're allowed to get away with it because it's just wrestling. I mean, John Pollock wrote a brilliant opinion piece on this, and that's the problem with it, is it's just never held to any kind of proper scrutiny. Now it's part of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate in TKO. So you can't fucking run away from this. And that bad press will affect share prices because they're a major component in the business that they do. So, you know, it is a case that you put that onto him, and then along the way, you think, even if it's for what are, you know, the reasons are actually financial more than anything else, that they are more likely to be able to break up this old boys network once and for all. So, like, I think this is it. It's nothing to do with moral reasons. This is much to do with Slim Jim, for God's sakes.
Just going to say
and the idea of losing sponsorships. I imagine that'd be much more of a concern to TKO, because Ari Emanuel, there's all this stuff was at the table. They were happy to use him at the New York Stock Exchange. They were happy for him to go and like represent the company out in Saudi Arabia, to be, you know, to get them the links in Saudi Arabia as well at the same time. So, but they had to get rid.
Yeah, none of that has aged well. Like, you're totally right. Like, this is the thing. Like, TKO and entities like them, Endeavor, aren't gonna act on moral grounds. Like, they're gonna act on, do you bring us more money than you cost us? And, you know, at the time we were recording on Friday, this sponsor pressure from Slim Jim, of all people, had kind of just started. And I think Dave Meltzer put it like this: so that's just going to be the first domino, and a business-minded person is going to look at that and realize, oh fuck, this can go badly. This could get even worse. That it could pile on with other sponsors, and you know, that's why they act. You're absolutely right, JP. It's no moral reason, because like we go back to the start of all this. Like, again, the details that we found out last week were new, you know, and they were shocking, and we're all still reeling from it. The overall skeleton of Vince having allegations like this was fully known. Whatever you think of the internal investigation that WWE did, and based on the legal papers we all read last week, it doesn't sound like they did much. Not even speaking to the victim feels like a bad start for something like that. But this was all something that was, you know, that will have been known. They will have known at least the skeleton details of what has happened within this case. None of this is new. You know, we saw Triple H at a presser say that he didn't read any of this, and I just watched that going. I mean, I don't believe him. I think he's a lying cunt. But if he is telling the truth, it's probably because he already knows. It's probably because he already knows all these details. These details are new to the public, but they're not new to the people who are working in those buildings. They're not new to the people, you know, to WWE corporate officer number 1, or officer 2, or officer 3, or officer 4 that are detailed in these legal papers. Like, there was clearly a culture there that knew what maybe you can hide behind. They didn't know the specifics of what Vince was up to, but they knew what Vince was up to. TKO took this, you know, and Endeavor took this company and brought Vince McMahon back. Like, you look at like Ari Emanuel and Vince McMahon, those early presses runs they were on, where they were sat laughing and joking about, like, oh well, you know, wasn't going to let Vince leave because I'd body slam him if he tried to, type of thing, like laughing and joking. None of that is going to age well, which tells you that again, their decision was based on, well, they could see some kind of financial positive in keeping Vince around, so they kept Vince around. They made sure they wrote into the small print that, like, you know, the gigantic risk factor of taking on WWE was going to be Vince McMahon, and they gave themselves an out that they've now executed but they only executed it because the pressure of sponsors, the fact that this Netflix deal could still be in limbo, all of those things of what have actually caused them to act. So I don't know if I'll push back a little bit, JP, on whether TKO will clean shop now or not. Like, it's a lot of people are almost expecting Triple H's head to roll. I don't know if I expect that. I mean, if a big part of what's going to happen next is going to be, is there going to be, more legal action? Does it end up seeing a court? Does it get settled before that? Does Vince McMahon, now that he's out, dig his heels in? And, again, as we talked about on Friday, this has all come about because Vince McMahon stopped making payments. He's an obstinate piece of shit. If he continues doing that, then it might wind up in court, and then in discovery, we might, get text messages. We might get more detail that explains that, it turns out corporate officer number one is Triple H, or, is one of the other names that are there. Maybe then, action will come from TKO, but I think it's only going to be when the hand is forced, JP, because I think Triple H is their guy, and Triple H is like, their point man now with Vince gone, and they're going to hold on to him until it becomes inconvenient to hold on to him. I honestly think that the action that they took, on Friday night into Saturday morning and convincing Vince to sign off and convincing Vince to resign, they're hoping it's going to be enough. The stock price is a little bit down today, but I think a lot of that's to do with UFC valuation. It's gonna take all the pressures. It's gonna take whether it goes the legal route, whether more gets leaked before they take any more action. I think they're gonna be hoping they've cut the head off and Vince McMahon is gone, and they can carry on.
Yeah, I only ever think they'd clean shop only if it suited them to clean shop, and that's more image related than anything else on there. So I think the only thing that they would look at with Triple H is they couldn't fail to be very deeply unimpressed by his performance at the press conference, which I'm sure we'll get into as well for that. And having watched the whole press conference, just to see just the sheer lack of preparation for it, and trying to kind of, we spoke about a phrase called toxic positivity, but this was it into kind of overdrive. No, I don't want to think about the bad thing that affects this company. And, this company is still, whether people like it or not, it is the embodiment of sort of Vince McMahon. Like the way it is set up, the way it is generally presented, that is all very much on him. They haven't deviated away from his vision radically since 2022. It is you might talk about minor production things, but it effectively feels like the same kind of product. And Vince McMahon himself is I think this is the other issue in all of this. Is he liable to stay quiet? Or do you think he is just going to go down and would he go with a scorched earth policy, which could really get fucking deeply nasty if this ends up in court? And you wouldn't put it beyond him, because I think that's just how he feels like he has to operate. And his good mate Donald Trump has done much the same thing in many of the legal issues that he has had. So he'll just think, no, I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm just going to stonewall it, and I'm just going to pretend it's not there. And he would do that. And in return, I think they're the things that TKO would look at. If he's going to start, I'm not saying Vince naming names, but I wouldn't hold it beyond the realms of possibility there. But
he's going to act out in some way, because it's last time. This isn't going to be like last time. Last time when he left and then forced his way back in. With the line of "I was given bad advice," and got his way back in. That's because he had the voting power to be able to do that. He no longer has that. While he's still unfortunately going to sit fat and rich and make money from any WWE / TKO success going forward. He is not going to have the power to put himself back in that position and take any of these jobs up. But you're right, fair point, JP. Is he going to, like I said, be obstinate and force this to go to Discovery, refuse to pay, as is basically happened here? Is he going to have the best interest of the company going forward? Because I was almost the only element of it I was surprised more on was that they convinced him to jump, because that was another problem. Although there's small print written into Vince's taking on these roles with TKO, Was it pop? Was, you know, could he have just stayed still? They must have had something that's convinced him to jump. But I'm actually shocked they convinced him to jump and being the obstinate old fucker that he is. But you know, there is that side of it. But like the fact that he's stuck. The fact that he's been willing to do that, is he gonna, you know, turn again like he did last time and make life difficult to TKO? And how difficult can he make life for TKO if he you know, he's going quietly now, but will that remain the case?
Yeah. It is going to be interesting to see what the next set of chain of events are. The thing I would say that he has generally had within WWE, like a level of support from some people who are working there, and in talking really about your Bruce Pritchards of the world and the like, who have managed to kind of stay on like fucking cockroaches. And I think the problem is they're going to be seen as like problem people, because if they're asked a question on Vince McMahon, what are they going to do? They're going to call him a genius and fucking do some old timey boys will be boys bullshit, won't they? And just try and paint the fucking, you know, paint all of the victims in such a horrible light, because that's just kind of how they roll, and it's kind of how they've always rolled as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm probably, again, like you said, and we might, you know, we'll probably just agree to disagree on this. I kind of think that there is, as a result, there is actually going to be some change that ends up happening as a result of this. Because I think in a new corporate era, that's what they're going to look to do. And they're going to, like, they don't have to tolerate a Vince McMahon figure, so they won't. Like, if this was coming out about Dana White, and trust me, there are issues like with him in so many ways, I don't think it's on this kind of scale. And I think, but if there were, they'd get rid of him as well. Like, that's what they would do, because it is all ultimately down to a kind of a share price, and that's how they view it. And so in order to kind of stop any bleeding, stop any kind of negative press, stop anything where potential sponsors, they don't want to look at it. And it's a good job that they've sold all of these TV rights now, isn't it? That's very handy to have got all of those out of the way, because, you know, would Netflix really, would they be looking at WWE at this point in time before this kind of story as well? Like, I mean, again, this is my cynicism about the corporate world is pretty rife here, but like they've managed to kind of monetize pretty much everything is there. Is there going to be an effect on how the company is viewed, or is it just going to be like, we've shoved out these people out the door, they're our kind of scapegoats, and we're the new WWE and we're moving on into the future, which is what they're kind of hoping, and that's what Triple H tried to do. And I don't, I
was trying to get an inkling on like what way they were going to go based on that Triple H pressure. I don't know whether like he was badly prepared, or whether you know he was prepared but then shit the bed when he was like in front. Like, I don't think that could have gone any worse for him, Matt. Like, honestly, like, even, I mean, from like, obviously there's the moral point of view, where it's like, if it's true that someone in Triple H's position hasn't read this lawsuit, that's fucking disgusting. And that tells you that comes off like they're not taking this seriously. Like, from a PR point of view, that's a complete disaster. But like every element of the way, the words he was using, talking about how we've had an amazing week, you know, talking about wanting to focus on the positives. Like, he came across like a man completely unprepared,
out of his depth. I think I said on the weekend show, like, the way they were going to do it was good. They should have like had a prepared statement at the start, at least, if they didn't want to, like, you know, answer the questions that were gonna come. Because, as you say,
he had that piece of paper, he was shuffling around. I was convinced that's what that was going to be.
This is it. And then, as you say, even if he's thinking like he's gonna, and without a prepared thing, when it comes to it, as you say, he shit the bed. Like, he in his head, he was thinking he was saying the right things, of course, but it couldn't have come across any more wrong. Like, it was a bad performance.
Tony Khan's had some rough presses recently, even. Like, it comes to something as well when at the same presser, I almost felt like Cody dealt with the situation better than Triple H did.
Cody definitely did.
Triple H sat there, gave you no, like I say, if the TKO line is gonna be, we take this very seriously, and you know, we take even as Cody said, you know, we take the welfare of our talent is really important. All of those things. Triple H did nothing to make you think they're taking it seriously. Did nothing to make you feel like, you know, a big element of the story. Yes, Vince McMahon is a headline, but again, a big part of, you know, when you read through like the entire legal case, like, a lot of it is, you know, taking place. You know, if he wants to present it as, you know, this was one bad story, but we want to focus on WWE and we want to focus on the company. This all involves the company. Half of the things that happened on company property. You know, some of the worst allegations in there, you know, the trafficking elements of it and the rape elements of it took place in WWE headquarters. Another gigantic element of it that, again, if it gets to a point where the legal case goes further, we might start finding out who these names are. But chief officers, one of which sounds a lot like Paul Levesque, based on there's internet sleuths out there who figured out, you know, where his office is, which floor he's on, and whether he would fit the description of one of these officers who appeared to know. But it's, you know, like you said before, JP, it's a culture within the place of people who were aware of this and allowed this to continue on. Like, that is evident in there. You can't just say it's a Vince story, it's one story, let's focus on the company. This is a company story. And yeah, like, from a purely moral point of view and from a, like, what the fuck is he up there saying point of view, we can act disgusted. But even if you wanted to be cynical and just be like, okay, what would the appropriate PR response be? As you said there, Matt, it would probably be to have prepared statements and have very specific things. Or even as bad as he was, as Tony Khan kept saying, I can't talk about that. You could have a better version of that. Yeah. Any PR person worth the salt would have trained Triple H to do that. He kind of showed that, like, yeah, he didn't give the company a very good look and didn't give himself much of a good look as somebody who can handle this crisis going forward.
No, he was Tom. He's Tom from Succession. He was in front of us. Yeah, a select house committee on this, worried about kind of perjuring himself because otherwise he might end up going to jail. I mean, I think it's one of the things where he can't. This is someone who has been at Vince McMahon's side for nearly 30 years. Yeah, like this year it'll be like 27 years. You want to say he was there? It's kind of like 97. He was around like that kind of top mix in the company, and you can't. He messaged thousands of people about this. Now, I'm not saying it as a defense for some of those people who've been messaged it, but unfortunately it feels to be like the Faustian pact of being with WWE's. You have to tolerate this fucking horrific human doing things like this and thinking it's fun. And just like, well, he holds all of the power and all of the cards, so I have to go along with it. But this is a guy who was at like their every step along the way, at like his like kind of deepest, most innermost circle. That's where Triple H was. So the idea of kind of hands up, I didn't know anything, I didn't read about it. Was he involved in the investigation committee that didn't even contact like, the victims? I mean, like, so what happens there then in that case? And you know, that's where the cynicism comes in. And that's where if you're TKO and you're happy to sort of cut loose on people, that's the kind of thing where they might just do that. And would they, you know, get rid of him? I'm not saying that they would do tomorrow, but would they get rid of him if it meant that it was going to have a negative effect by keeping him? Yeah, they'd do it in a fucking heartbeat, and they wouldn't even look at it as well, because I think that's the risk that he is running, that kind of level of willful ignorance to the crimes of Vince McMahon as well, which, you know, actually, do you know what? I wrote a list of all the stuff he had done. Like, and that's why, you know, it feels almost like quite glib to go into it as well. But you're talking about there's at least sort of 7 victims that we're talking about on here. We're talking all manner of horrible things, covering up bloody murders, allegedly with Jimmy Snuka, to, you know, the death of Owen Hart and the kind of negligence in that, and then trying to sue his widow in the meantime as well, to creating a culture not only of like the levels of abuse that was happening. Ashley Massaro as well. It, you know, we saw all the stuff with TV. It feels almost like Jimmy Savile, where you look at the behavior now and you go, he was hiding in plain sight. This is who he was when he was getting Trish Stratus and then trying to like humiliate her on TV every week. That's kind of who this man was. Like, he wasn't like, we were thinking, oh, it's Mr. McMahon, the TV character. And it's like, no, it's kind of him. That's kind of exactly who he is, the kind of person he is. And he's fun. Like, you pray for there to be some kind of justice. It's just that these arseholes managed to just tie things up in litigation for years So there isn't any kind of like proper resolution to any of it at all. It still makes me angry fucking talking about it now, and the whole story has made me angry about it. And I was angry or listening when you guys were talking about it on the weekend show, and I was listening to that. I was just like, it's fucking horrific. It makes me wonder, like, bloody hell, wrestling. Like, do I even fucking like it in those circumstances?
Yeah, it's and again, I think there's definitely like almost a feeling of wanting to, Vince is gone now, so it's over, and people want to kind of morally make that line. And I still think, despite Triple H's performance, which is the first thing that gave me some doubt, I think they're gonna want to keep him around. I think, like I say, he's their guy, and I think, and as you've kind of said there, JP, like, you can't tell me over the years when he's shadowed Vince McMahon for this long that he's his son-in-law, he didn't have a very good feeling of what was going on. You can't tell me that. And I'm sure that the relationship is massively complicated based on her actions. Stephanie didn't know. She's one that's hard for me to figure out. Like, she's one where it's like, is she just an evil corporate robot? Is she, has she been indoctrinated over the years? Is she just, a dad's daughter? Like, at what point did she know and what did she know? But she knew. You know what I mean? You look at, like, if this was an episode of Succession, I can picture, her maybe wanting genuinely to be rid of Vince when these allegations first came to light, and then feeling bad about it because it's dad. And she's been inconsistent in the way she's been consistent, because she fucked off as soon as Vince came back. She did go on TV and get the fans leading, thank you Vince chants, but it's a complicated relationship when it is your dad. So I kind of I'm not sympathetic to it, but I kind of understand. Triple H probably is in the same boat in that, partners talk, and if they were on this investigation committee, they probably know more details than even we do. In fact, not even probably, definitely know more information that we do based on this. But at the end of the day, I think, as bad as he was on Saturday, I think TKO are always going to be able to say, and Triple H is always going to be able to say, well, we knew he was having an affairs, but whether that's going to hold water when, the affairs he were having were on company time. And like I say, these text messages indicate that, there was a rota going on with Johnny Ace, and there was, people who worked in the company directly involved in, the things that Vince was getting up to. But I think they're probably, as long as they can get away with it, going to try and get away with it with Triple H. But another one of these performances, and that's the other thing that's so frustrating about that presser. Like, they give his feet held to the fire even more. You might have look at the information we got out of just 3 decent questions being asked. Just out of that, even in not answering, how much did Triple H say? By saying that he hadn't read the reports. Like, that is a story in itself. That's why he asked these questions. Unfortunately, there were other reporters in the room who gave Triple H the wiggling room to be able to go on about the Netflix deal, who gave him the wiggling room to talk about how this is an even better era than the Attitude Era, who gave him the wiggling room to kind of talk about things that weren't this story. But I think if he'd have been given the opportunity to answer, he was literally sat there, JP, asking for more questions. If he'd have gotten more genuinely good questions, I might give that a little bit more thought, to be honest. I think there might be more of a chance there. He would have stepped on more banana peels. He's actually quite lucky that while, the people who did ask the question should be applauded, the rest of the feckless press kind of let us all down. Because if they didn't, that, who knows what he might have said.
And it was a packed room. And what did they give him at the end of it when he finished? They gave him a fucking round of applause. They gave him a round of fucking applause. Like, taking the piss. And he was, like you say, asking more questions. And I just assumed a lot of them, it was just cowardice. Didn't want to ask him. They're not upset. It's a nice, sweet deal. They manage to get interview superstars, don't they? That's what they're interested in. They're not going to ask, like, hard, tough questions along the way.
I've seen the excuse as well that, like, some people might not want to, talk about that stuff, or might have their own baggage. So well, don't put your hand up there. Don't ask the first question. How about that? How about let somebody else go? Like, if you're only going to get, as Brandon Thurston rightly put on Twitter this week, if we're only going to get 6 questions out of Triple H, don't waste this time with a fluff question. Like, you can sit there, get your FaceTime, and let the grown-ups in the room ask grown-up questions. Like, you can miss out on one question and one bit of FaceTime with Triple H. That holds no water with me.
It's just like, it also sums up how poorly served we generally are by wrestling media, because it is a case of, like, for access for this. I mean, God's sake, I've seen enough press conferences with football and other real sports. The only time there's ever a round of applause is if someone's won a major fucking trophy at the end of it and they're in the room. And even then, I don't think that happens from like the journalists, do they? And it just sort of summed up to me a kind of client press and a lot of like kind of just the sheer level of posing that goes on. I just find it like it's depressing at times because you think actually the best thing for wrestling, if you want to be considered to be credible, is to actually answer these serious questions. It's how you deal with the really bad shit. It's not how you deal with like the $1 billion TV deals and isn't everything great. That's any fucker can do that. It's how do you deal with the really tough stuff? That's like the kind of real proof in the pudding. And I think what we saw is just like it felt like a massive chink in the armor of like a Triple H going, actually, you put him on the spot with this stuff and he's stumped. There is no answers. Like, and he's, for a wrestler, he's as PR trained as along with the rest of them as well. But he's got no answers in there. And I think in terms of like the other, I don't know if we should be mentioning his name, but the former UFC champion is mentioned in there as well. I thought
it's that's what the Wall Street Journal is saying. but if they're confident enough to put it in, then I think everyone else should be. Yeah, that was notable. That like you maybe in a WWE that didn't have TKO involved. In fact, we know, don't we, from Vince McMahon appeared on SmackDown like the week after the initial allegations. I think a Vince McMahon led WWE would have still had Brock on TV or still had Brock in the Rumble this weekend and would have gone forward with their plans. That shows a little bit of a different approach, I would say, from TKO. That like there's been a grown up somewhere who's made a phone call and gone, the pressure's on right now. CNN are covering us, Deadline Hollywood are covering us. Like there's literally, even the Daily Mail have been holding them WWE's feet to the fire. Like the pressure has been on in a way this weekend that like we didn't really see last time. And I think it's probably the strength and the detail of the allegations that's caused that. But there has been at least a reaction to like, okay, well, we know we can't go ahead with that because if it was still just WWE and it was Vince McMahon, I think they probably would have tried to face that. We probably would have. I say this with a touch wood that Brock doesn't appear on Raw tonight and date this recording, but like that tells you everything that they pulled them from the Rumble and didn't go going with WrestleMania plans. Like, will he, to your point before, JP, will he appear on TV before Mania? I would lean yes, but I guess it's not out the realm of possibility to just go, you know what, we don't need this attention. Let's see where we are, by SummerSlam. Let's put Brock on ice for a while and see what happens later in the year.
There's a part of me, and this is what I thought with some of them. We're going to speak about it in more detail later on. But if CM Punk is injured and out for that length of time, I was like, well, what would they do in order to try and replace him? And I went, oh God, that's their kind of other option. Well, we had to do it. We needed to get a big star in there, and they'll have their excuses and everything else lined up in there. But whether, I don't know, that's not going to fucking wash, and is mentioned very much in this. And if this goes to trial and everything else, like, which is the thing that ultimately TKO should be wanting to fucking avoid, like the bloody plague, because of Discovery, because of all the other things that can end up coming out as a result of it. I can see them doing that. And this company has always had the policy of they'll forget soon enough. We're seeing the other company do it at the minute, aren't we? Like in lots of different ways. They're doing, well, they'll just forget it's wrestling. Let's move on. Let's be happy with it and whatnot. But yeah, I'm like you. I kind of weirdly think, yeah, he will be back before Mania.
We'll see. But yeah, it is. It's just like the pressure is on in a way that like it hasn't been before. We've got obviously, like we keep saying, with the amount of money that's involved there, it's going to depend on what happens with this case. If this case goes to court and they'd ask for the NDA to be looked at as soon as possible, if that NDA gets thrown out as unenforceable, do we then end up with like 3 or 4 other people, a couple other people involved in this appear to be, or at least one person involved appears to be somebody who was an active talent in WWE at some point. If that person gets unmuzzled, and we hear more, or the alternate timeline is none of that happens and it does all quietly go away, and we focus on WrestleMania season, we focus on Triple H's fantastic booking, and we focus on all that side, and all of this goes away. That's the side that TKO are going to be hoping for. But like I say, I can't really call which way it's going to go, because like I say, the attention has been there way more than it has for any other one of these stories. JP, can you recall, we even got Janelle Grant's attorney doing press rounds at this point, giving takes on it, literally actively appealing, for other victims to come forwards. Like I say, outlets as big as the New York Times are covering this. It's gigantic news, worldwide. This shitstorm could continue on and could absolutely get worse before it gets better, and I'm hoping for that outcome.
Oh, absolutely. I'm praying for that outcome, because in some ways they should be praying for it. They should be praying that there's an end to this fucking toxic culture. If you want to go fully blown corporate, you have to. That's the thing you need to shed. Is you need to shed this kind of idea of like, oh no, we're just going to block it out because we don't want to think about the bad news. And it's like, no. You need to fucking face the bad news head on, and you need to confront it. And like, what are you actually going to actively do about this? I wonder whether or not it's the amount of performers that will end up coming out as a result. And I think talking about this, and these are people who will be very public facing. And
Ronda Rousey's being vocal. I was shocked at that when I thought, is that a fake account? No, it's actual Ronda Rousey. Putting Bruce Pritchard on blast for being Vince's avatar. I'm sure she's not wrong. She
fucking nailed that motherfucker straight away. Glorious to see. And again, there's a lot of things she says that I wouldn't agree with necessarily myself, but bloody hell, she has nailed that there, because it's very, very true. Look what happens when you look at that. I mean, it's in all aspects is he like that, but it's those kind of figures who rush to the defense of a Vince McMahon and tell us how we don't understand him, we don't understand wrestling. But it's like, no, we understand what a fucking cunt is, and this man is an absolute cunt, as we've seen as JP. Well.
You're right. There should be just a fresh start, and I know how long that'll take, but it needs to be a complete fresh start going forward. Do you know what I mean? For the get rid of everyone associated, everything. It's just it's got to be that, like, no other way.
Do you think there's any? I mean, I don't want to speculate about other people who've left, but the fact that Kevin Dunn has gone now as well, and other people, and you can't imagine that he didn't know for all of the years he worked with Vince McMahon, and all of it in many ways, this idea, and they've already got a team set up to kind of almost take over in lots of aspects. And let's face it, TKO aren't exactly shy to sack people, are they? At the best of times, when fucking profits are great, they'll sack people.
Isn't it even a network though, JP? That's not going to be existing. So if you want to erase footage, even going as far as that in the future, you can just completely start it afresh, and that all that footage is gone, hasn't it? With Vince on, with whoever on it, it's all gone. So it's just madness.
Well, Chris Elliott raises there, that is a question though. I could keep saying Triple H is their point man. They lose him, maybe Paul Heyman ends up in the role or something like that, but who knows? Anyone who's been around wrestling this long is gonna have skeletons in the closet. But
The Rock, why is The Rock on the board? I was thinking this just then, just like listening to you guys, like The Rock, he's on the board, isn't he now? Like, just
it's a great week, didn't he, to do that?
He could be the face, going forwards. I think, I don't know. It's just,
I think that's what they want.
Yeah,
they absolutely want him as not day to day running it, but they want him as the face of WWE or their WWE side of things. You replace Vince and you put The Rock in there. Like, I can easily see that being the case. So, and it makes sense for them to do that in that, again, that cynical corporate way. But that's how they think. And you have to get into their mindset of they're going to do whatever is best for TKO. And if it means cutting people loose, then so be it. And they'll do it in a fucking heartbeat as well. So, yeah.
I guess we'll see as the story kind of develops. But I think it's all going to depend on that, how quickly this goes away. again, it depends on the media not being quiet, which again is why the presser was disappointing halfway, and then the other half was quite encouraging. Keeping this pressure on, continuing to talk about this remaining a story, which sounds familiar to what we were saying about some things happening in AEW, but on a much bigger, grander, far more graver level, is what you want. That is the only way pressure carries on. If they're allowed to just go back to business as usual, then yeah, that's when you know that, like, that's just, TKO won't have to act, and TKO will just continue on, and Triple H will have his fancy WrestleMania season, and that'll be it, and that'll be all they'll need to do. Is they took Vince out, so problem solved. And there are an alarming amount of people out there, JP, who feel that way about it, who just wanted their Royal Rumble this weekend, who just wants to go back to enjoying the wrestling. We've all been guilty of it, like these cases, as we talked about with stuff with AEW. It's often just inconvenient to be a wrestling fan at times, and once that inconvenience is taken away, then you can move on. But as you've rightly put earlier on, the book didn't stop with Vince McMahon, but it was the entire culture of the company. It's who knew what and when. It's if we find out more names as to who the anonymized people are within the legal papers that show that there were people in high-ranking positions and low-ranking positions who are fully aware of all this stuff. It's if we find out more of those names that heads will roll. But yeah, I don't necessarily want to get my hopes up, because that's what should happen. But I just don't know if it's genuinely what will happen. But yeah, anything more you want to say on all this making this, JP, or any other elements of it you want to cover? The only thing I'd say again is, just as we said on the weekend show, I'll repeat it again, it bears reading. If you can stomach such things, read the detail that is in there, that is available directly. I think Variety I've got it, the full legal case up there. You can get it in a number of places. There's probably going to be more paperwork coming as well. It's almost worth knowing, because this is such a gigantic story and is so fucking disgusting that, like, yeah, I think the headlines don't do it justice.
I think the one thing as wrestling fans that we can't, it's this blissful ignorance thing. We can't do it, because if for those of us who if you say you love wrestling, then we need to, then you want it to be better. Then by exercising people like this from wrestling and holding them truly to account, that makes wrestling better, and it makes better overall. And it's that culture in WWE which everyone who worked within the company has always been so terrified to talk about it, from the smallest of little things to kind of working conditions to all of the bigger kind of issues that Vince McMahon himself and then things that he has done over the years as well. And so it just needs that broom, and that culture just needs to be completely destroyed and taken out. Because it feels to me like the younger end of the performers, and particularly the female performers, they're going to be the ones to kind of keep listen to about this. Because I think there's going to be a kind of moment of where the dam breaks and a load of people start talking about the real kind of backstage culture of WWE. And that wasn't something that necessarily happens during Speaking Out, did it? That wasn't something that happened, and that might be something that could happen. That would be the best case scenario of it. And I don't say that just the idea of no, we're going to get all of the fucking truth out now. We're going to get rid of all of these horrible fucking cunts.
Yeah. Just to note as well, Ramon's just put in the chat, the Bellas have apparently put a statement out saying that shocked and disheartened with the recent allegations against members of the WWE. It's been a lot to process. We don't stand for or condone this from anyone, no matter who they are. We want all women to feel safe and supported in the workplace.
Their mother had cancer while John Laurinaitis was doing this stuff.
Fucking that, the level of fucking who ever thought the fucking Johnny Ace, gauging wrestler was going to be Vince's weird fucking sex mate. What a fucking just on a personal level, how the fucking disgusting that relationship is. And you're almost rubbernecking, wanting to know who are these other people who are involved? Who are these people who are happy to be involved in the fucking just gross stuff that Vince McMahon was into and was up for. Who else was going along? Like Johnny Ace is just like he's getting off lightly because he's disappeared into the sun and he's not the headline, is he? But like, oh, that man just absolutely makes your skin crawl, doesn't it?
Yeah, a fucking proper prick of a fucking human.
Definitely. Well, on that note, that's what we know at the minute, and like I say, we talked a bit about it on the weekend show as well. But yeah, it doesn't get any better, and it's just a horrible, horrible story altogether. And yeah, I just really, I mean, if anything, I just hope that we get justice for Janelle Grant, really, as far as whether it's money or whether it's a day in court, whether it's other people coming forward to to support a testimony. But like, yeah, last thing I'd say is just like the bravery of her willing to come out there, put a name out there, agree for a picture to be out there, to be the focus and center of this entire story. We have found this week that if she hadn't done that and she hadn't spoken up, then Vince McMahon would still be in power and nothing would have happened, would it? So, definitely got to say that the bravery of her to come forward that led to those dominoes, that led to that sponsor pressure. Yeah, we wouldn't be here without that, obviously. But yeah, absolutely gross and disgusting. And yeah, I'm sure it won't be the last time we talk about it. There's no easy way to move on, but I suppose we will continue on with the other happenings in the wrestling world, and nothing, it doesn't, nowhere near as important, JP, and nowhere near as relevant. This is the biggest story in wrestling for a reason, and will continue to be as the weeks go on. But we'll do our best to kind of, as we did on the weekend show, cover everything else that's going on in the wrestling world. And yeah, the news week does continue on, JP. Is we can't get a rest this last week or so. Is like an hour before we went live tonight, and maybe we'll get more news as the day goes on, or as the evening goes on, maybe on Raw tonight. But would you believe it? CM Punk's injured again, JP. CM Punk, as was seemed pretty obvious at the Rumble to me. He definitely looked off, I would say. But yeah, reports are coming in this evening from both PW Insider and Dave Meltzer that Punk did suffer an injury during the Men's Royal Rumble match on Saturday. Mike Johnson of PW Insider is the one to confirm that it was a torn left tricep, which I think had been the rumor, is an injury that he also suffered in AEW. It's expected to require surgery, which make him unavailable to perform at WrestleMania in April. Post Wrestling have also said that they've had a source from WWE confirm it with them, as noted. Yeah, September 2022. It was the Moxley match when he last tore his tricep. First televised match back in WWE, a Rumble of all things, is where we saw this. Obviously, he did have the two house shows. He will be at Raw tonight, so I guess maybe people listening to this will know if he said any more on it. But yeah, basic estimates on this, JP, 4 to 6 months. CM Punk, we hardly knew you. You described him in our show notes here as the Darren Anderton of pro wrestling. Yeah. Is that who CM Punk is at this point? I can't say I was shocked when this news came through.
I wasn't shocked at all. Like, I think there was, having seen when I was watching, I was like, something's happened there, because he seems to be moving at half pace and just doesn't look fucking on it at all. 4 to 6 months fits in, isn't it, with him? Like, he just, Jesus Christ, him doing this, like, it's almost like when Ronaldo did his fucking knee in the second time while playing for Inter after just coming back from a knee injury. He's just constantly injured, which would then suggest, well, actually, that's why you can't really go with him all of the way. It was the part of the deal. We always spoke about the personality with him being the thing to kind of ruin his stay in WWE. And you go, well, actually, the thing that might end up doing it and just sort of really making sure this run doesn't go too far, it's going to be his injury. It's going to be his body. Like, whether or not it's just his body cannot take it anymore. It's just broken down. And that long rest has meant somehow that the body has kind of healed to a certain degree, but it just can't sustain this. And any kind of like long action in there, it was like always running a risk of this happening as well. And here we go. And that takes him out to what, like SummerSlam, basically, doesn't it? Like, be Money in the Bank and whatnot. But you would have had a match. I mean, a match between him and a Seth Rollins, who's also having to gut it out through injury at the same time. Like, that it would have required in a long match. Like, there would have been no guarantees he can kind of get through that. Yeah, we're expecting that to be the news. I think that's going to be it, and I think it's, ultimately it justifies their decision in a logical sense as well, what they did go with at the Rumble, because imagine how much worse it would have been if he'd won the fucking Rumble and then we'd found out about him having fought a 6-month injury. Be like, oh my God. Like, it would have been a lot of fun. That would have been, I'm not saying it's the saving grace of all of this, but it's the one thing I think that kind of saves it, is that he didn't win and they're just going to end up writing him off.
He's had a good couple of years, hasn't he, Matt? Basically 2 years. Sat at home with Larry.
Yeah.
It's not a film.
Yeah, matches in 2 years, something like that.
Like the previous fucking 7 years, isn't it? Like, I mean, what's going on?
You just got he's like me working at home, got too used to it, Matt. Just wanted to any excuse, punch his boss, tear his tricep, whatever he can do to be sat at home with Larry walking around Chicago,
Oh, it's just like, as JP's put it there, it was always like an option though. When he come back, it got mentioned because his body old up and stuff like that. But as you say, put him in a Rumble, and I know they put him in quite late, but he still had to like deal with all the big stars. Take the Future Shock DDT was the actual injury, wasn't it? So it's
looks like it from the replay.
Yeah, and you could, as JP, you could see straight away some was up. But yeah, it's just it'd be gutting for him though. Like, he will be devastated about this, won't he? Like, and because that's why he's probably come back in his head, JP, isn't it, for the WrestleMania like main events and stuff. Yeah. So who knows what'll happen on Raw, and what he'll say and do. So yeah,
proven to the haters right, unfortunately, as Will said there about being made of glass. Like, I just can't fucking believe it again. Like, it's just like we get one match out of him and then he's out. I don't know what's going to happen. History's going to repeat itself in 6 months. I'm going to get really excited about the whole SummerSlam, the build to SummerSlam. I'm going to be like, oh, Phil's back. Can't wait. He'll come back at SummerSlam. He'll tear his other tricep, won't he? He'll jump into the crowd, do something stupid, break an ankle, then he'll be out to the Rumble. Like, people are already speculating, Matty. He'll win next year's Rumble. It'll be fine. You know what it does, in fairness, feel a lot like Cody, because you forget that, like, Cody came back and then was gone for like
6 months. Yeah, it was.
Was it the full 6? Yeah, the torn pec. It feels like that, doesn't it? Like, in Cody's case, it was like, oh, the positive was, well, he doesn't have to deal with this post WrestleMania lull and can come back in the high season, which he pretty much did, and he kind of played the blind there. Phil just hadn't got going though. That's the most devastating thing about it. It's like, even for him, like, he was after, like you said there, Matt, he was after this vindication of being back in WWE. He was after, that hitting that goal of main event in a WrestleMania, or of sticking it to the haters that not lasting in AEW, and to prove that he can here. And at the first fucking hurdle, it's the most Phil thing ever.
It is, JP. As I said there, like, you were right. As I said before, the injury in the body was always going to play some part in this, and as you say there, Ben, like, it's that first match though. Literally the first televised match.
The Rumble as well. How'd you get into the Rumble? All he did was lie around. He took one DDT. Like, he never took a double arm DDT before. Like, does he not know how to bump off one? All he had to do was fucking lie. Not happened in that Rumble. Like, he didn't have to do it.
There's no big spots really, wasn't the whole match.
You do your entrance, you get your shit in, and then you lie down in the corner. That's how a lot of this Rumble went. Like, you did it, you did your poses in front of the camera, and then you lay down in the corner acting knackered. Wasn't that fucking hard, was it? Christ. I don't know how we got through that period in Collision. I am stunned now with the benefit of hindsight when he was doing long matches every week. I remember you saying it, going, he's pushing this. He's doing every fucking week he's doing this. Like, something's going to happen.
Maybe he's better like that.
The
reps better keeping his body warm, keeping going. Maybe like this WWE schedule's not going to work out.
But Ben, he was, as you said there, he was getting, like, to be fair, because that's what we were saying before there, like, he was just getting going in the sense that Cody promo was like, he was finally getting there. I know you were big on it, like, and then I was really looking forward to seeing how the character was going to go before WrestleMania, because he would have snapped at some point and you would have seen the real CM Punk kind of thing. But yeah, it's just it is. He'll be fuming at this. Like,
wonder if Trips has got buyer's remorse at this point. Probably not. I'm sure. We'll find out with Raw and stuff. But I'm sure he'll be back later in the year. But it's just comedy, and it proper opens like WrestleMania up. Obviously, Seth being injured as well. Like you're pretty much taking a match off the docket at this, but they might need to dust Dwayne off and have Roman work both nights at this point. Like if anyone else goes down,
Gunther and Seth,
he's not
it'll
doing
be
that.
now. 100% Gunther and Seth, it'll be 100%.
Maybe, yeah. If Seth's fit, himself is available for it. But yeah, it's absolutely absolute sickener. But I can't say it's a gigantic shock with Punk's track record. But on that note, we should talk the Royal Rumble itself. Yeah, it kind of rightly got dwarfed by the bigger news. We said, I'll be honest, going in up until last week, maybe teaches me something about the ethical consumerism under capitalism, JP. But maybe I shouldn't have been excited for a WWE event. Maybe this news kind of brought us all crashing home. But it felt like there was a specter of it over the entire event. It just felt, for all of the goodwill that's gone towards WWE until this week, I think, as I said to Matty on the weekend show, I think a lot of people were excited for this Rumble. I think, all the pieces seem to be in place over characters, over storylines. A lot of, it was the first Rumble, I would say, as well, where they haven't necessarily had to do a lot of relying on the past. In fact, we got none of that on this Rumble. And then the show came about. I feel like the men's Rumble is probably where we're going to start, following on from the Punk conversation. I feel like the men's Rumble kind of sums up the show for me. It was kind of just paint by numbers WWE. Like everyone's attention was somewhere else. We're going to find out in a few weeks that I'm not saying he's this infallible genius, but Triple H was concentrating on other things, or he left fucking Road Dogg or Bruce Pritchard to put the matches together or something like that, or they were lacking that kind of focus on things. But I feel like it was just a show, JP. I'm guessing Matty's going to be more positive than me on it, but like for me, I was genuinely, mostly again up until last week, quite excited for this year's Rumble. And even as somebody who can point out a lot of the positives in what WWE have done the last year or so, or last 6 months or so at the very least, it felt like this was just a bit of a nothing really for a Royal Rumble show.
I think that's it. Yeah, that was the problem when I was watching it on the Sunday morning. Is there's things about it and the way that they did this, like for example, say the refreshing lack of just past it nostalgia acts or tag team wrestlers in either one of the Rumbles. Actually, it did show, well, actually they've got this big mid card, but ultimately it was like the way that they kind of booked a lot of this Rumble. It was very paint by numbers. I was trying to think of what were like the big kind of incidents that happened in a lot of these matches, and like there were more things almost from the women's match, like when Jordan Grace came out, for example. I was like, fucking hell. But when it came to the men's Rumble, like it was far too long. I thought that was the thing about it. It was a bloody long Rumble. How long was it in the end? Was it like a sort of like an hour and 20 or something, like fucking mad? Like it felt like an hour and a half. It went on. It felt like it went on for ages. And yeah, the two matches like in between the Rumbles were just there. Like I didn't feel necessarily excited by them. And I couldn't help but think about the kind of Vince stuff. And then during the men's match, I was thinking, well, is Brock Lesnar going to be there? Why? Because that relates again back to all of the news about Vince. And in some ways, it was almost at the very end, it was like, well, he's just going to cut to the chase. We're just going to get the final four that we kind of expected. And we did. And I did say, thinking in the previews and stuff like that, it's the final four that really makes it for the kind of Rumbles and everything else. And I thought, because Punk was injured, but it also fucking dragged. And the crowd were quite quiet at the end. Like felt like they were burnt out. It was weird.
It was a weird atmosphere, Matt. Like, I don't know whether it was I'm sure you can point to the numbers and the amount of people up there. Genuinely impressive in the trop, as Michael Cole repeated 400 times through the night. Like, I don't know if sound, maybe Platt can give us a live take, but like, I don't know if sound was dissipating into the sky or what. But they just I expected again, despite the news and everything else, I expected the WWE crowd to be massively into all of the over characters that they've genuinely got right now. And it made a bit of a fool of me because nobody felt that over either. And there were a lot of prolonged periods of silence through the night. I don't know what was going on with this crowd either.
Yeah, I thought, especially in that men's Rumble, I thought first two, I thought the women's rumble, like, it was pretty much there. And in the four-way, it was. When Orton was hitting them RKOs, the fans were going for it. But them last two matches, and especially that main men's rumble, you're right, I agree. It was weird. As you say, I expected, like, even when Cody come out, it was a good enough reaction. Punk the same. I was thinking, you usually see the cameras going, the fans in the front, and he was nothing like that at all. It was weird. And Platt was saying, wasn't he, throughout the night on the Discord, that they'd lost the fans pretty much before the KO match or during that match. So yeah, it's just it was a weird one. But even in the men's rumble though, like if we're breaking some of it down, I'm just not on board with this with our truth stuff, boys. I've got to go there straight away. It's like he is. Honestly, it's like he's great at what he does and stuff like that, but he can't be in there with like a main event act, JP, in the Judgment Day. It just brings it completely down, doesn't it? Really does, though. And I don't see the end game with it because they've turned on him about 50 times already. And I know his gimmick is he's oblivious to it. But it's like, come on. It's bad.
This is the thing with... Sorry, go on, Benno. You go.
Oh, go on, kind of.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, with the R-Truth stuff in there, that was like the kind of, like, it was the one bit of, like, sort of, like, real silliness. And they've got this pretty stacked roster they have, but as the thing I came away with is like how many real stars are in there, people who are like massively over who are in that match, and really there was two of them. Like Gunter, there's like a more of an appreciation of that he could be at that kind of main event level, but there's a lot of very good mid-carders is what like I realized when looking at everyone when they came in. Andrade fit very neatly into that spot as well, of not like feeling doesn't feel like particularly exceptional. But yeah, I was just racking my brains like, what are the big kind of stories and angles that came out of like the Rumble match itself? And
JP, come on, let's not forget. I mean, it's not for everyone, of course, but the Karrion Kross and Bobby Lashley.
I knew they'd fucking carry that on.
Yeah, that's one that they actually went to, and that's going to be building to a match down the line. But it's not appealing, is it?
If this was it, appealing as the word, it was a Triple H Rumble, is what it was. It was like everything I would say about him. In theory, his booking's very good. Going back to the NXT days, in theory, the NXT booking was really solid. It was solid week-to-week TV that built to the takeovers. But as we always said back in those days, people only really watched the takeovers. They didn't actually watch the week-to-week TV and do it. This is a pay-per-view, so I suppose the argument is different. But it felt like that. In principle, using the men's rumble as an example, did it achieve the things it was supposed to do? Yeah, we got a big Punk and Cody face-off at the end. Yeah, a lot of the big stars got moments in there. And I would say it's a roster of usually quite a few over characters. For me, they just weren't over on this night for whatever reason. This crowd weren't going for them, but they didn't give them anything to cheer for, because while all of those boxes were ticked, even like Jimmy and Jey Uso had a face-off at the start of the Rumble. On paper, if I was booking an EWR game, it'd be like, yeah, I've done that. I've ticked that box. We're on the way to WrestleMania. Yeah. The difference here is it's real life, and as well as ticking the box of having them in the ring together, you've got to actually do something that is entertaining there. They've got to actually do something that's memorable. This was the thing with the Rumble. So much of it was forgettable. So many eliminations just came and went and just happened. And I'm not going to argue with you, Matt. There were definitely, certain people eliminated certain people that they're probably going to go back to and use a story going forward. But the eliminations themselves were all forgettable. Like, people don't remember when Jey Uso got thrown out. People don't remember when
they should have eliminated each other or something, and they didn't, did they?
Nothing happened. They literally they faced
I just realized Jimmy was gone.
Yeah, he's just gone. They did all the facials. They did all oh wow, it's Jimmy and Jey, number 1 and 2. What a coincidence. In theory, that's really good booking. But then in execution, they ran through some spots, and then number 3 came out, and then everyone hugged the ropes. And it was like, and I know that's token Rumble stuff, but like, you can book creative eliminations and creative, memorable spots. And I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to agree with me, Matty, but I feel like this Rumble, especially in the women's, had a lot of the same problem. Was just lacking in those famous WWE moments with a capital M. It was lacking in those creative eliminations. Those, we're going to see those two face off at WrestleMania moments, but done well. They happened. Boxes were ticked, but yeah. Does anyone really remember much of it? It was just a blur, for an hour and 20 minutes.
That I said, I can't knock not agree with you, Benno. That men's rumble was flat as it comes. It genuinely was. Like, and I know they tried at the end, and you can say Punk's injured and stuff, but even when that was meant to be the biggest stars in the company going at it, a la Hogan Warrior at the time, Rock Austin in 01, that big memorable thing, even that was like, it was flat. And this, I don't know whether you'd expect me to say this, but even since like SummerSlam, I think the pay-per-views haven't, like, you had Punk coming back at Survivor Series and stuff, but I've liked the television more than the pay-per-views. Like, on telly, as JP saying, these mid-carders, like last week on Raw, honestly, like, people might laugh. Honestly, JP, these were a cracking match with Gable and Ivar. People need to go and check out. They've been, and Raw with the New Day and Imperium. There's some good stuff getting going there on telly. And when it comes to these last, like, 4 pay-per-views, 5 including Crown Jewel, they've been flat, and they've been, as Benno said, whether it's basic, ABC book, and whatever you want to call it. They are lacking that something, Benno, at the minute, and that's me saying that.
Since SummerSlam?
Yeah, genuinely. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It all ties in. JP, he's like R-Truth, and I'm not just picking on R-Truth, because once again, at what he does, I laugh at JP. He makes me laugh. He's a great comedy wrestler. But putting him with Judgment Day, they're backing themselves in a corner that, like, it's over in the building, so they've got to go with it. It shouldn't be a thing in the first place. It shouldn't be happening on telly. Honestly, it's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't lie. When I see the Live Life Love, Live Laugh Love thing, and he's wearing the Judgment Day hood, I smiled at that as a passing gag. But the stakes for the Rumble are meant to be you in the main event of fucking WrestleMania. And there's 2 nights of it. It's supposed to be like a proper main event, not Nakamura wins it. Here you are in the middle of the card. Like, we're not doing that sort of stuff anymore. It'd be like a proper main event. But no, instead we have him coming in and pretending he's a fucking tag wrestler. And yeah, very sort of like Vincey, very, very Vince nonsense, isn't it? It's the kind of shit that he fucking loved putting into shows and the rest.
I did like, though, about the men's rumble in particular as well, though, and it's not even to do with the action. I do like the little things they're putting in, like the clocks, where it kept coming up, like how long people were in there. It's kind of what TKO said about his presentation.
Fudged them a little bit, didn't he? There were definitely moments where it was like, it's been 20 seconds here. That was someone else coming out. Like, what's going on? Like,
when things up in the middle. Cody's been in for like 35 minutes, JP, and then it'd have like the second underneath. And even at the end, where the 2 champions are in the skyboxes, and Cody basically
that was good.
I like the elements of that thing, but it's nothing to do with the actual in-ring action, really, is it? It's the little elements that they're putting in with this sports type base thing that they're going to go forward with. He said so. I mean, I really like them. Really like that.
I think they were relying on, like, I think the final bit with Cody and Punk getting over better than it did.
Yeah.
If Punk wasn't hurt, which again he did seem off, and now we kind of. I've seen a lot of Punk's washed. Maybe he is physically, but, like, you know, he had one of the best matches of the year there at All In not that long ago.
He's still there, to be fair, Benno. He's still done all the things he was asked, even injured there, to be fair. He did.
Yeah, I thought that was jumping the gun a little bit, although I had to eat a little bit of crow because maybe physically he is washed. Maybe just not mentally at this point. But even that just felt off. It was like 70% of what it could have been. You know,
tried to show and take it, didn't he?
And then, as a few people have said, as soon as, you know, Punk had Cody on his shoulders, what did he say about, as if I'm going to lose to Dusty's kid?
Not losing to Dusty's kid after 10 years.
At that moment, I was rubbing my hands because I had the bet on Cody. I got him at 7-2 to win the thing because of the misinformation WWE had been putting out.
I got worked by that.
I won 40 quid in the end on that one, mate. But almost a tenner on it. So happy with that. But, like, yeah, I was celebrating that, but even that didn't feel like the punch in the air moment I thought it would be. Flat is the word, I'd say, for the men's rumble, but we got the result that I wanted, Matt. You know, Cody and Roman WrestleMania. Never in doubt, was it? They were always going there. It was always coming, always going to finish. Unless they fuck around with things. Now, do you think that's impossible? Do you think there's no way we get a 2-night rumble for Roman and we do the Rock? Because that's the other thing they were putting out to the press, that Rock's adamant that he's going to get his Roman match this year at WrestleMania. I wouldn't rule out that they'll pull the trigger on it if they lose anybody else through injury over the next few weeks.
I think there's more chance of Roman doing 2 nights than a triple threat. I think that the use of weird story, but it fits the story as well. It genuinely does. He could beat The Rock or lose to Cody on the first night, and there's ways you can do it, JP. There's many ways you can do it, and I think, like, obviously he beats Rock, and as I said to JP on the pre-show, Benno, the time's near. He's going to lose that belt, I think, isn't he? At WrestleMania, and Cody is going to finish that story. Like, so, yeah, it's and I did like that I like the way they basically announced it on the night where he basically said, "I'm coming for you." I did like that aspect as well.
Yeah,
of it, so was good.
It's whether or not you do. I mean, do you do the Rock Rollins, which seems like a weird matchup,
wild,
and everything else for like to go for for the sake of having him on?
See that? Does anyone want to see that? Rollins' mum doesn't want to watch that. Like.
I fucking don't. I wouldn't fucking stay up for that. I would guarantee the fact I wouldn't be staying up for it if that was the main event for night one. But I think this is the kind of the issue now is there's no one else really with the kind of level of star power. Like they'd set it up quite well. Like you say, the paint by numbers booking, the idea is it's like Punk hates Rollins, Cody wants to face Roman. They're facing each other in the end of it. So you've set up your two main events and you've got the Elimination Chamber as this kind of joker card that you can play next month in order to set up the other one as well. And now it's like, well, Drew's not big enough to put in there. As much as I've enjoyed Drew McIntyre.
Him and Sammy, WrestleMania.
He seemed checked out. He seemed checked out in this Rumble. He felt like the real life story of maybe his contract being up felt like it carried through. I expected lots more from him in this Rumble. He didn't really give it, to be honest.
But then nobody else did. And I think, like you say, it's this way of the entrances was so fucking. There was so much emphasis on the entrance, the get the shit in, do your pose to camera, and then lie down in the corner or pretend to pull someone over the rope on it, like say rope hugging, like. And that's all it was. It was like nobody had ever thought about some big fucking spot. I thought Bron Breakker did fine, what it is, but then I've seen enough of his actual matches to know that none of them are actually any good. When you put him in the ring to have to work actual matches, proper worked matches, and not just a series of spears, that it is like the whole thing kind of falls to pieces. Really, I say falls to pieces, probably a bit much, but he looks fucking bang average, and I think that's the kind of thing. And the only reason that he stood out is because he did a load of fucking spears. That was it. There was so many bits like that in this match where just like. That was the only stuff that seemed to be going on. When I've just seen the last bloke do this. Oh, the next guy's doing it as well. Right. Okay.
Punk's the best example of that. Like, as a Punk fan, I'm watching Punk. Like, in this going, oh, who's he going to interact with next? Him and Gunther had, like, the most forgettable exchange that, like, if you blinked, you would have missed it. Like, him and Sami Zayn, that's another one where, like, there's the real-life beef there. And that was a nice moment. Sami Zayn, number 30. I was scratching my head going, who's number 30? Oh, yeah, we've all forgot about Sami Zayn. That's cool. That's nice. And then him and Punk had, like, he bumped Punk once and then that was it. Kind of moved on. No one had come up with, oh, they're going to be on their own for a little bit in the match. Maybe we should come up with like 30 seconds that make sense and excite you for a match that might happen next year. You know, it didn't even have that. It was just, it was lacking in something. And you know what's even else lacking, Matty? We can't even have an argument about the story because I think we agree now. Cody's going to beat Roman at Mania, and all will be right in the world.
In preparation to this tonight, Benno, I did go back and watch our Grapple Combat, from last year, and I did say to you, we agreed. I think we both agreed that Cody will finish the story at WrestleMania when Roman is all alone. And I think that will happen. But as a couple have alluded to, even ironically in the chat here, don't get me wrong. Let's not get all this twisted here. The end is nigh, yes. But if somehow Roman did win this, honestly, I would pay JP. I'd pay money to see the reaction if Roman Reigns walks out of WrestleMania as the champion. I would genuinely pay my fucking money for that.
The only way they can make it interesting. Like, we'll go to it now. Yeah, we'll manufacture an argument here, Matt.
No, you might manufacture it. It depends what you're going to say, you mate. Go on.
They've ran out of steam. Like, I've got no. I shouldn't say no doubt. I expect them to juice it back up again. Because again, we've ended up, we could have had a juicier argument if it was Rock, and then I would have really questioned whether they could. Even paid by numbers booking, I think, a year in the making. Cody lost last year. This year he's got to win. But you've got that little bit of doubt because they did it last year, is going to be enough to make their match interesting. But like going to that 4-way, if we're done with the men's Rumble, like I just feel like, we are a year late, and I think the balloon does feel a little bit off the rose with all the bloodline stuff. As good as it was last year, it really has cooled off significantly. Like, I feel like the Jimmy and Jay interaction at the Rumble, while the crowd were bad all night, was a little bit worrying in that maybe I ate a little bit. You say you went back and watched the Grapple Civil War conversation. I stand by the fact that main event Jey Uso was a gimmick, and he's never going to be fucking. He was never going to be over enough to beat Roman, but he's gotten more over than I ever thought he would. I don't think that's true of Jim Uso. Jim Uso, like I made the joke on Discord, if it's main event Jey Uso, it's lower mid-card Jim. Like, he's fucking
been jobbed out too much. Isn't it? That's on the way to Newcastle. He's been jobbed out so much.
Completely undefined character as well. I don't know what his motivations are at this point, or what his role is in any kind of feud with Jey, what their relationship is, what that story is at this point. You're hanging your hat, I think, Matt, on, I think you'll be into it, Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns, but for me...
That's the end game, Benno. That is the end game for me. In a story...
Match, yeah. Can't wait. I don't think who's the babyface? Like Solo?
Roman.
I don't think that interesting. Solo Sikoa's not interesting right now, is he? As I didn't even say this, somebody else said it on the Discord. He beat John Cena. Is he any more over it? Not really. He's a guy. I just think the entire act has lost a lot of steam. Again, I've said this before, haven't I, Matt? I said it around near the end of last year, and they heated it back up again. They did that SmackDown that got an all-timer rating. I shouldn't doubt them being able to do that, but it's at a real low ebb right now. You'd have to heat up. You'd either have to bring more bodies in, or heat up those bloodline lads a lot more, or do something to maybe even refresh, dare I say, the Roman act, because even that's getting a little bit, that's gotten quite pink by numbers, and he's got his things and he hits them and he has the great entrance, and then the bell rings and then there's interference at the end, and he wins again. LOL, Roman Reigns wins. Like, I feel like that's not as hot as it was, and we're one of the build to WrestleMania, so they've got a limited amount of time to get it to that point for this big, possibly 2 main events.
It's like we swap roles in a way, Benno, because I'm gonna have to agree with you on some of it and disagree on obviously on some as what you said there. Like, if we're starting with the actual heating of it up for Mania, I think that'll just happen naturally because Cody's there as well. So you've got someone in there who is going to do all of his power, isn't he? That to me, everything he does is interesting, Cody. He's one of them wrestlers that'll always deliver and will always raise the game, especially going into a WrestleMania. He'll make it emotional, etc. But I do have to agree with you on some of the bloodline stuff, Benno. Like, I can't not deny. Like, that's why I think I was so passionate when we had them original discussions, we'll call them, about like the Civil War. That was so good, Benno. That wasn't like just, oh, this is good. That was all-time stuff. And even I've realised now, like, I'll still always like the acts and I'll love them, but it has cooled off so much, Benno, since then. I, as the biggest fan, can't deny that. And it's not, I don't even think it's to do with Roman not being there all the time, because he wasn't there when it was all going on as well. When it was hot, he was there more, of course he was. But you're right. I just think that they've been jobbed too much. I think Jimmy and Solo even at some pins, like LA Knight's beat him, Orton's beat him. That shouldn't be happening, especially when he's just beat John Cena. You're right there. I think there's been a bit of a, because these guys, we're so over, we can just job them out a bit. But no, they should be protecting them even more. Like, and I can't disagree with you on that side of it. Like, sorry if people listening wanted the big discussion.
There's not many of them, don't worry.
No, I know. No, I mean in general, not like, like our discussion, but I can't fake it. Like, I'll always be a Roman guy. I think you're a bit harsh on Roman there. I think that plays into the thing, and that's what'll happen with Solo, Benno. I know you're not excited by that, but Solo keeps, even in this match, I know he saved them earlier on in the match, and he got the cleanest win he's probably had in ages, Roman, because they had a bit of a 10-minute match after it. But I think that still plays into the fact of, fucking hell, you're still relying on me to help you win, so that when he does turn on him, there's a reason for that, and he'll explain all that. So I like all that, and there's still been more interactions with Solo the past few weeks, backstage and stuff. So yeah, it'll
still be a Solo Sikoa match, though, won't it? At the end of the day, like, can't polish a tag, can you?
I like Solo, but I do think JP. I think, like, as Booker T said early in the week, whether you take that with a pinch of salt, that he's trying to get Jacob Fatu. He's trying to convince him so much to come in and
get him to play the role.
That would refresh it up so much if Jacob come in, because JP should have been there a long time ago for me.
Him and Tama Tonga as well, I think, will end up in the mix with this kind of stuff as well. I mean, it's funny.
You're relative in any way, or is it?
Well, you can play it in as like family friend, can't you? Because it's Haku's lad. It's like Tonga, but you know what I mean. You can play stuff in it, even if you're saying, "Oh, I'm having to get some outsiders in here as well to sort out family business." I thought the problem, I mean, my problem was with this match was the result was obviously never in doubt.
Yeah,
and with the benefit of hindsight, taking out LA Knight of the Royal Rumble was a bad choice. It was a bad choice. In some ways, it would have been even better if they just went him and AJ Styles, and AJ Styles has a good match with him, but he wins. Just so you get Roman Reigns on the card. He has a decent match, but you kind of know where you stand. And instead, I think that element of doubt, if you'd had an LA Knight in the ring, in there with a Punk, like that's where your interesting interactions was kind of with him. And I see Ramin suggests in the chat as well, and it's an interesting one here. Do you put him in against Rollins? And which is if you'd said to us Eli Drake in a WrestleMania main event, like if you said us like 18 months ago, you just think you lost it, didn't you? You just decided to go completely mental.
Consistently overact though in the company.
That's it.
An emergency, maybe, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I think there's an argument for it as well.
How about that?
Yeah. The
It'll be like
battles would be good there. Like
it'll be like AI. You'll be like, who's
Spider-Man
talking?
Yeah,
Whose voice is that? It's like Rock on LA Night. I can't tell. Close your eyes. You won't know who's doing the promo. But genuinely, they could do that. That could be a match.
This is the thing. Like, I think you could, and I think this was the problem with the benefit of hindsight. By making it a 4 ways, you took a couple of acts that you could have put towards the Randy Orton. You could have put towards the end of of the Rumble, and you would have had that interesting kind of dynamic of other people that Punk and Cody could have interacted with in the ring, where it's like, everyone for themselves. But instead, you never had that, and you had them taken out of the mix. Oh my God, imagine the heel heat forever chucked out LA Knight as well. That would have been like fucking awesome as well at the same time, and the crowd would have really gone for it. But that was my problem with the match. I mean, in terms of stuff that happened within the match, I thought it just felt very like we said about a lot of this card, very paint by numbers 4-way. Like I remember the entrances and the match began, and I immediately felt that kind of zoning out effect. So I was like, we just get to the point where Roman Reigns wins.
Solo comes in and Roman wins.
Yeah, that's what we got. Like there wasn't anything kind of like anything even creative. I thought maybe we might get someone new appear, like you say, but we never got that. We thought there'd be a new person to add to the mix.
That's the only, like, as a Roman fan, that's the 0.01% of like, if he wins at WrestleMania, when like Solo's out the mix, Jimmy and Jay and Cody's finally got him beat, Jacob Fatu or someone comes out fresh to like, oh, he's killed the story off. That's the only thing. Other than that, obviously Cody is obviously gonna win the title.
I love how we weren't Jacob Fatu and to be a heavy involvement in a WrestleMania main event. Fucking crazy. Court Bayer standing on his sofa going, I fucking told you he could do this.
I will say I enjoyed like the AJ and Orton kind of interactions with a couple of creative ones, especially the RKO and the finish as well, like into the ropes with AJ about to do the springboard. I thought that was really
they've always worked that in their matches, Benno. They always do that for years.
That kept me interested to a point. So I didn't hate the match, but yeah, it was a match really. That's kind of all I've got to say. And yeah, finish felt like a rerun. So yeah, that's that. What should we talk about next? Women's Rumble. What do we think of that one?
I liked it.
Kicked off the night with that one. How do you feel about the 2 Rumbles at this point? Like, there's just no way out of it, is there? Unfortunately, there's just like, I think maybe that's part of the reason the crowd was so quiet for the second one, because it is a second one and it's a lot to do twice in a night, and it was not like either were particularly creative, so it was quite repetitive. I don't know if there's a solution though, because you can't. There's always been a men's Rumble, so you have to have that, and taking the Rumble away from the women and being like, oh, you're getting an elimination chamber instead is unfair. So I don't think they're ever going to come to that conclusion, but it has inherent problems, doesn't it? Doing the 2. You have to try hard to make them quite different, the women's and men's. And I don't know if they pulled that off this year.
You need a 2-night Rumble. That's the only way around it. I think 2 in the same night, and unfortunately, like your enthusiasm for entrances as a crowd is going to be gone as well.
Especially when you don't know the themes. Like, I didn't know half of these. I didn't know anyone that was coming out there.
I don't think that shout like
Seth. Seth didn't. Seth was there's like a video of, like, I can't remember. Yeah. He was just like, you could tell he was like, I don't know this, listening, trying to figure out what the song was, because that fucking whoever does that in their music now, it's not CFOs anymore, it's someone else.
Is it Death Rebel or someone like that? Is it?
I think that's the name. Yeah, they fucking suck. It was just like, it was sloppy as well. I thought the Women's Rumble, there were so many botched spots. Like, I thought like Jordan Grace came across the most professional of like.
She was
She
unreal.
looked just
Benno.
better than the NXT talent, Matty. She looked better than a lot of the main roster.
She looked like she belonged as the champion in there because she was so smooth. The move she was hitting, JP, she took advantage of that because she was fucking brilliant. Really good.
I see on this, I was like, there was like 4 names I'd written down for various reasons, and it was like Pam, Jade, Jordan, Naomi. They would have thought it was different. And I thought Jordan Grace came across. I don't know what the deal is. It's very weird. There is, in terms of, it was apparently, you know, they're saying they were easy to deal with, and she doesn't. I saw people. She didn't lose anything. She gained stuff by appearing in the Royal Rumble and having a kind of a good length of time and being a fresh face and complete, like, not sticking out at all. It was like, oh no, and not like and being able to stand out. Like, all of that stuff I thought was really fucking cool. I thought she like looked the bloody part as well. Whereas, you know, I look at Jade Cargill here and I thought she didn't look particularly special. That was like, I know it sounds kind of, what were the big moments? Her and Nia Jax. If I gave a shit about Nia Jax, then maybe it would mean something.
Yeah,
but for me,
pushing her, JP, a little bit.
They have been.
Yeah.
It didn't make any difference. They like push her for it. She was like, but that was like her. That was like, kind of felt like the big moment. I mean, they hinted at stuff with her and Bianca Belair, but I didn't get the impression that she's kind of like, she looks ready, but she is still a look, isn't it? It still isn't like, it's very rough around the edges. I mean, I think, again, the thing I would take away from this Rumble as well is, even more so normally with the Women's Rumble, they rely heavily on nostalgia. Like, there was no fucking Michelle McCool's in there, or bloody Kelly Kelly's. I thought Trish Stratus would be a cert to be in there, but no. Actually, they went in with a lot of their own talent, which, for better or for worse, is ultimately a better long-term strategy for them to be doing that. But at the same time, I didn't think there was like a whole lot of drama towards the end. Like, I think that was one of the other things. Like, there wasn't even really like a final 4. It just sort of went to a final 3. And I thought, well, Pam's winning here, isn't she? Like, they've already got the storyline set up.
The Kairi Sane, was that a botch? That obviously, like, that she wasn't meant to go out that early, was she? And Asuka called the audible, didn't she, to get her eliminated straight away? I think that was a bit of a...
Yeah.
It looked great, though, like she was hanging on, Kairi Sane. I don't know if she done that. Look like it.
When I saw that, I thought, how the fuck is she going to climb up from there? Unless she's a spider. I thought, there's no way out of this.
Yeah.
There's no, like, handy little scampering up, because she's holding on to just the edge of the fucking ring apron.
She's done well to
like,
last that long, JP, in that position, to be fair to her.
Yeah, but
I couldn't do it. I'd still be there now. I won't be able to get up.
To go what we were talking about, I thought Jordan looked great. I was made up for her. It was nice that she got that moment. It was nice that, like, you know, that's a positive that we're in this world now where contracted, I guess there's going to be some kind of relationship going forward. We can talk a bit more about that in a bit. But a contracted TNA talent who isn't going to be out of deal for 2 years got spotlighted on the Rumble, treated well, commentary put it over. She had an elimination that mostly protected her, got a decent run in there. And, you know, I thought she played the blinder as well. I love that she was on Twitter posting a video of herself at home, which she clearly recorded 24 hours before. I think your Geordie did well there, Matty. But yeah, definitely shouldn't get lost. I thought she did. I thought she probably looked the best in the entire match.
She was great.
Yeah,
we're going through the list of women there.
The best surprise across both Rumbles was her.
Yeah.
But even that you said, Benno, the elimination, that was like the TNA indie, wasn't it? Like taking the move on the apron. I love that, the way like it got to be done as well. So,
yeah,
honestly, can't speak highly enough. Yeah, it was great though, but can't speak highly enough. Took the chance, and I hope like there's more to come. I
thought Naomi was pretty nondescript. It was that was another one. The fact that they got that face off was cool. That it was like, oh, here's a match that we reviewed from a TNA pay-per-view from like 3 weeks ago, and they're doing, you know, a big hug spot on a WWE show that, like, presumably half the audience don't get. You know, people have a go at Tony Khan for doing for telling stories on his TV shows, Matty, that you know, you have to be the hardest of the hardcore to understand genuinely. Why were they hugging? It was,
but at least it was from a month ago and not 20 years ago. Ring of Honor, Benno, to be fair.
So is that. I don't think she did much though in the match. Really, she got a nice pop coming out.
No,
it was nice.
Can I be honest with Naomi, Benno? Sorry to jump in. It's like that was the one for me. Like she before Bailey won, which was a minute longer. Naomi was in there for 1 hour and 2 minutes. Apart from the first 10 minutes, she literally lied there until the end. She'd done nothing else for like the last 50 minutes of that hour she was in there. But she ended up with the second record of all time. Like, it was strange, that.
Yeah. So going back to Jade, I don't know. I to be honest, I thought the air in Nia Jax was a really good, was probably the moment of the Rumble. I thought that was well done. I think where they didn't nail it with Jade was that she sold a lot. Like, there was a lot of the match where she was doing the stuff a lot of the other women were doing, which was lying on the ground and then, someone else is coming out, so I'll bump for them and then I'll lie on the ground again. She shouldn't be in those moments. She should have, the Nia Jax moment should have been it, really. That should have been the thing you remember. Maybe a couple of other tentpole spots. Do it towards the end of the Rumble so that she can get eliminated, maybe in a similar-ish way that she did, and get protected because she's in that final three. I think that's where they failed with it. But I actually think the execution of like the big entrance and the presentation of her and the making her go one-on-one with Nia Jax, which felt like it was getting built up through the Rumble. That was one foot through line that we were kind of calling like 5 or 6 eliminations before. Oh, they're keeping Nia Jax in this after they'd already done the stuff with Pipe and Niven because it's going to be her and Jade when they get there.
Yeah.
I've got misgivings about some of it, but mostly I thought they nailed it.
Yeah, 100%. But I did. I thought she looked, but I feel like JP said about rough around the edges. I think Jade, no matter how many years, she's always going to be like that, and that's good. Like, even like your Bron Breaker, it's that explosiveness. It's a bit different, isn't it? So I don't want to see everyone trained the same or polished the same. We want to see this bit of difference in the matches and stuff, and I think that's part of Jade's appeal for sure. And I hope she doesn't lose that.
Pam winning. Any thoughts on that, Matt?
It was obvious, Benno. Yeah,
she's someone who, she's someone who, like, I heard the What Culture lads talking about it earlier. She is someone who was an open goal and is somebody that should have, been bigger than she was, as a babyface in WWE, especially when she first came up from NXT. It was like, oh, you want a female star who appeals to all ages and is a gigantic hero to kids. Here she is. And then she was booked haphazardly to the point where, a stronger points over the years have been as a heel, which is not something you ever would have predicted in NXT. But feels a little bit like we've come out the other end here, where it's like the focus has been on, like, I think Triple H, to be fair to him, said it in the conference call, where focus has been elsewhere, but she's kind of been a constant. And now it's her time to shine. Like, that felt like a shoot comment as well as like a work comment for her and the character. And that, like, I think she was the obvious favorite when it came to the bookies odds for a reason.
Yeah, deserved though, Ben, and that's what they've been telling on SmackDown as well. Really, if you read between the lines, that like every time she goes for a high five or a hug off Damage Control when they've won, they just blank her, and like she's still selling it like I'm part of the group type thing. And the day's coming, like whether she turns first and says, "Well, I want," because apparently she's on Raw tonight, is wanting to challenge Rhea Ripley in the storyline, but it's going to be obviously here and EO at WrestleMania, I think anyway, and how they get there. But she deserves it. But always been like brilliant, Bailey. Always, like, I was a bit at first, I was like, oh, but then the more you watch her over the years, she is that constant and she always delivers, especially in the Thunderdome era and the pandemic. For me, that's where she won me round. Like, her and Sasha were incredible during that run. Like, they really were carrying the product at the time. So, and she's been great ever since with Damage Control as well. And as you say, you would never have thought, looking back at the time how over she was, that she'd be a great heel. But they say, the greatest workers of all time can work both, can't they? So, fair play to her.
Any thoughts on the Women's Rumble? Before we move on? Yeah, it was overall sloppy, got where it needed to go. Similar to the men's one. Well, is it a Rumble I'd ever want to go back and watch? Absolutely not.
It was better than the men's one for me. I enjoyed it more, and I thought that
maybe I enjoyed it for the wrong reasons. I laughed at a lot of the bad spots.
No, but I thought that added to it for me, Benno. I liked it because of that. I loved the bit as well. Chelsea Green, I've got to give her credit. I fucking loved their performance. I thought it was hilarious. That was old school wrestling. Everything, JP, even like when Niven and Jax were going at it and she was just getting squashed in the corner and selling. Honestly, like, hats off to her. I thought it was great.
I thought it was kind of more, I don't know, it was just felt a bit more unpredictable necessarily with the lineup and everything else. And I suppose that's a part of me that I was intrigued. So I was expecting to see Sasha Banks turn up, Mercedes Moné, talk about in a bit, who might be signing with AEW, which seems to be a line that I've heard for the last like 5 fucking months or something like that. ever since he was actually at Wembley. And everything else, but yeah, I've not really had too much to add to the women's rumble. But yeah, two rumbles one night, too much.
Owens, Paul, anything on that? It was a match. Thought the finish was clever, if maybe not ideal to do on a pay-per-view. A fuck DQ finish kind of fits Logan Paul's character, I'd say, Matt. So maybe you get away with it. Rematch was fine. Wasn't really. Wasn't the high end of Logan Paul matches. I would say it was somewhere in the mid range. We've had a couple of them recently. Hopefully the bloomers and off the rose. We can have the conversation over and over again. How he's a natural. You know, he continues to look good, but yeah, match itself fine.
Yeah, I did. I enjoyed it. I thought it was more of a sprint, though. I thought they went like with the Ricochet one. That was more like you could tell early on that was always going to go 20 odd minutes. Whereas this felt he went into it pretty quick from the off and it didn't slow up. I thought it was. I enjoyed it really, and I thought the finish was good. I did not see it coming. The finish, and that's what. And I was laughing like, oh, you know, it was good. It actually got me, and it'll work into a rematch probably at in Australia, won't it? More than WrestleMania,
yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed it.
And yeah, that's kind of it, really. It was a show. It was the Rumble. Yeah.
Not amazing. It wasn't.
I was
sound. It wasn't. It was sound. Far from amazing. For which the build, like we always, even on our Patreon show, we've built the Royal Rumble up over the years, and it'll always still have that affinity with everyone. But yeah, it was like I did expect a lot more from it, and I didn't get it. But it was sound.
Just thinking that like a Patterson booked Rumble has several peaks in it, and this, like, both of the Rumbles more or less had like kind of really like one peak, and it was the ending, and that was it. And normally we would have like some big couple of like what feels like massive moments sort of spread out between like a 1 hour match, and we didn't have that, and that's a long time to people to kind of fucking sit in their hands, which would explain a lot of the reaction from the audience as well.
Quick question from you, and there kind of ties into the other story. Do we think the TNA WWE deal is related to the MLW lawsuit, preventing accusations of a monopoly? There's something. There could be something to that. You know, as far apparently, like we're all expecting the deal to be there to be more there. Apparently, WWE have reached out to other companies. I was thinking, will Julia turn up or something like that instead? Apparently WWE sources said TNA were very easy to deal with as far as getting Jordan. She is very much still signed to TNA. We are all probably expecting there to be more to this relationship. I don't know really what more you can do. I can't see it a TNA versus WWE show being fantasy booked. Maybe a TNA versus NXT fantasy show. Maybe that could have a little bit more to it than that. But yeah,
it's whether or not they could say take people on loan. It's whether or not would they do stuff like that, would they send a couple of people across there? But it's hard to think what kind of like wrestler they would send across there. Because if they're keen on them, surely they just want them to stay within their system, wouldn't they? They'd want them to be on NXT and stay there where they can kind of monitor the progress close up. But I suppose if it's anything like the All Japan thing, they might arrange the odd date where somebody can get sent across there. But I don't know. Like I'm not convinced. I'm convinced they do this because it adds novelty to the Rumble, rather than they're going to be doing some big long-term relationship. Because with TNA, I think they've got their own kind of goals in mind as well. Imagine how Nick Nemeth would feel like, I've gotten out of there. I'm doing it. I'm spreading my wings, and WWE come back into the company. Now you got a job to fucking Bron Breakker, and it's just like, this is fucking some sort of torture.
Anyone but Tommy Dreamer. Anyone. Get anyone from there except for Dreamer.
Oh, well, there we go. We'll see where that comes to that. And yeah, the only other news coming out was obviously the Brock change. Apparently, it was him and Dominic Mysterio was planned, and they obviously did the exact spots. It seemed like with Bron Breakker instead. You know, the Brock stuff hard to talk about considering what a fucking scumbag he comes across in the Vince McMahon texts and all of that stuff. Purely as a match and an idea, kind of like that idea. As far as Brock and Dom being a match as an alternate universe, where I'd be quite excited for that. But yeah, whether they go back to that booking or not, as we said earlier, we will see. But yeah, that's pretty much it coming out of WWE. Obviously, we'll see what happens with Raw later, and if they manage to turn things around, maybe the Punk things all work, Matt, and he'll be back. Maybe Rock will show up. We'll see. But yeah, you were gonna leave us for the AEW chat. But yeah, anything more WWE you wanted to know before we let you go, Matt?
No, that's it, really. Benno, I can't believe we were in some sort of agreement there. I mean, what happened? Like, what's going on here?
Grapple Civil War is now, but Grapple peacetime agreement, isn't it? Grapple treaty.
Yeah.
I was expecting Grapple versus Grapple and me to feel like a child in the middle of a divorce, like Kramer versus Kramer, and it didn't quite happen this time round.
But JP, don't get me wrong, it'll be built up for WrestleMania, because as much as I know it's gonna happen, I'll be pulling for Roman like I always will. So let's it'll get revisited in a couple of months. Don't worry.
Cody better win. That's all I have to say. Any plugs before you go, Matt? Want to throw out the retro? Gotta give that a little bit of love. Getting there. Got better. Unfortunately, the biggest news story in the history of wrestling happened last week. So it kind of and I'm not talking the Netflix deal. Kind of lost its lost its place in the world. But people missed that while all the craziness was going on. That you're definitely run and check out retro.
Yeah, Retro episode 3 is there on the YouTube and wherever you listen to your audio. You know, we're going over the final 4. It's Shaping Steve this episode. We're going over the final 4 and the South Africa match with a Steve Austin singles match where Brett was officially off TV. But if you listen to the episode, we'll explain what he was doing in that time. He was on some tours, JP. He was on the German tour, the Indian tour, and the South African tour. So he was still getting his in-ring work in. And we go, we delve into the story, and Gareth breaks down the matches like only he can. So yeah, if you haven't checked that out, please go and check that, because we really enjoy doing that. And I'm sure you'll go into it again, JB. Time, we've got to mention time before I go. It's incredible, wasn't it?
Incredible stuff for this as well. We're having some brilliant feedback to it. I know there's some of it coming,
appreciate that
from lots of stuff on that. I mean, I think again, just to go back to that line, the franchise Ron Dixon. Like, I think that is just something that is like if fucking ended me at the time as well. January 92 and all the fucking craziness that entails as well, from the 4 pillars of TV, film, music, and sport. So yeah, if you want that,
and I'll agree with you lads. By the way, that Stay video terrified me as a kid as well.
Benno, yeah.
I get like a nostalgic feeling.
She was half cut, wasn't she? Siobhan Fahey. She was
strange.
She were pissed during that as well. I remember that. Just that face of her, that fucking smile and everything else, looks like she's been Stranger Things. But yeah, a lot of fun listening to Everybody in the Place by the Prodigy as well. It was like fucking what a wild top 10. That's all I'll say. That in '92, like, music was all over the fucking shop. Oh, really it is eclectic in the degree. But yeah, Time, absolutely brilliant. Go to YouTube to watch that. Unedited until the copyright people get involved, obviously, which they, for some reason, have fucking let things slide this month. I don't know why.
Don't jinx it, JB.
I have now.
No,
nice one, Matt.
No, thank you very much, boys.
Next week.
I'll catch up with the rest in the morning. Thank you. See you later.
See you later, mate.
Well, on that note, JP, we should talk some AEW. They've been kind enough to us, to be fair, this week to have a completely nondescript week, while the biggest story in the history of wrestling, the most prominent person in the history of wrestling, resigned in utter disgrace, good riddance to the horrible old cunt this week. In the meantime, on the weekend show, we barely covered Dynamite because there were really, like I say, the other stuff was justifiably the most important story, but overall, AEW's just been quiet, really, isn't it? Have you caught up with Dynamite since last week? Do you have any ice cold takes on Minoru Suzuki versus The Edge, or were you like the rest of us, digesting all of the story rather than really paying much mind to AEW this week?
Do you know, I really was. It was only until today and Collision that I thought I'd actually give them a bit of like kind of headspace. I'd made my notes and wanted stuff I wanted to say about Vince and on the Royal Rumble as well. And I thought, well, actually I could do it, because Dynamite, it was on, but it was just like a kind of a blur, like a real anonymous blur for how they were. And it was completely overshadowed. And the Collision, sound like Bret Hart saying the WCW. Collision was like, I managed to see, all of it in the end today. And I have to say, I think it was probably the most entertaining, 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining 30 minutes of wrestling I've ever seen. I think it was probably the most entertaining like is a better show than Dynamite. I'll go that far to say
Matty's
that.
gone. I can say this: it was a better show than the Rumble.
Yeah,
Not a high bar because the Rumble was pretty, Rumble spectacle wise and being a big show wise, not even a competition, obviously. And again, as Matty would like to rub in, attendance wise, a minnow compared to what the Rumble was. Actual enjoyment wise, though, I think Collision had more going for it. A couple of decent matches, maybe not necessarily much notable happening story wise there either. So maybe it's a tie there, but. It continues to just be a solid little Saturday show. That it's like if you watch it, the people who watch it are like, "Oh, I really enjoyed that," and the people who missed it probably aren't missing much necessarily. Where it's like, do you desperately need to catch it? No, but if you do, you'll have a nice, pleasant time. Dynamite and Collision were like that this week.
And that's it. And I think, every time, particularly with Collision, every time I make the effort to go out and actually watch it as well, because it's something that can easily fall out of your rotation. For the most part, I watch when I'm watching it, it's like it's nice, kind of like almost background viewing at points. But there was stuff from this I thought actually this is like I thought there's some things I really enjoyed, particularly in sort of the back end of the show, like in terms of the Eddie Kingston, Bryan Danielson stuff. I thought that was kind of interesting. Even the match with Willie Mack, where Willie Mack just came on like a house on fire and nearly beat him in the first kind of minute. I thought,
almost landed on his own head.
Yes, yeah, which is a risk with a lad that size, isn't it? That's going to be the kind of shit that happens. And Danielson Yuji Nagata was more fun than I expected it to be. I had sort of relatively low expectations, but I thought it was actually
great.
Yeah, it was one of those matches where it was like, right, Danielson just went, I'm going to work hard to get something really good out of this, and I thought it succeeded with it. I have to say, as much there's a lot of stuff about the main event that I really enjoyed, but in some ways, I tell you what I loved most. I loved the Serena Deeb promo after a match. I just went, and the way that crowd kind of reacted to her as well. It was only a little thing, but it felt like, oh no, this is the kind of person you want as a kind of a champion as well. Someone who just takes fucking wrestling seriously, who is a de facto heel, who the crowd just like because she feels fucking kick ass. And it was like, it was a squash against Robin Renegade, for Christ's sakes. But I thought that there was stuff about it. I thought, well, they're not going to do too much with it because they never have with Serena Deeb. But I really enjoyed that kind of promo. I was really pleasantly surprised by it. Just in terms of it's not a perfect promo she delivered on it as well, but that's almost half the charm of her, because she shouldn't be like this polished performer promo wise. She should just be like this technical killer who is completely able to kind of end matches and out wrestle everyone as well. So for me, it was like the second half of the show, because that kind of was the thing that almost led into the bits of the main event, which they'd had the Daniel Garcia stuff, and then you had the Mark Briscoe stuff. So it almost felt like the show long story of that was stuff that kind of worked. Now, in the bigger scheme of AEW, a lot of this stuff doesn't really mean that much. And, Collision is the Bryan Danielson show, and it will be for the foreseeable, which is why we're getting that and Eddie Kingston on there. But the stuff that is on there is what, if you're wanting to watch 2 hours of easy wrestling, and in some ways I want to say it's similar to the Impact show that we watched for last week, it very much sort of ticked that box for me. And again, I came away going, it's a shame that only 200,000 or so people are going to actually end up watching this show in terms of the rating in the States, because it's completely lost in the shuffle. But what they did with it in front of a very low crowd as well is they kind of made the best with what they had. And I'll give them credit for that. What do you think of Serena Deeb?
Yeah, I've got no real take on that. It was a good promo. But yeah, match-wise, I very much enjoyed the main event. I thought that was really strong. For a stipulation that didn't really make much sense to me going in. And didn't usually make sense to me going out. The idea that you're doing a cage match and escaping is a virtue, but hang on, you're escaping, you're leaving your partners 3-on-2, and then you're just escalating that more the more you go. It was an uphill battle. We can get into the reasons why that might have taken place and why that was even a thing in the first place, when AEW traditionally have always gone with the pinfall in cage matches rather than escape. That's always almost been something they made fun of WWE for doing, rather than what a proper cage match is, which is you're locked in and you've got to beat the fucker. But as far as actually executing it, I actually thought the lads did a really good job. And I think the chief among them was Daniel Garcia. I think they gave Daniel Garcia plenty in this. I think I hadn't really read the spoilers, so I bought Hotline Instinct. I was like, oh, it's Mark Briscoe now. Oh well, okay. You know, they do the beatdown on the ramp. Garcia gets to do the big baby face coming out with you know, the tea towel wrapped around his head, and we get that, and we get him like again. Maybe the reasons behind it are kind of shit that, you know, Malachi Black doesn't want to just get pinned by Daniel Garcia. But the idea of him being like, come on, you fucker, really? You want to leave? You don't want to fight me? Like, that played it as stupid as the stipulation is. They used that stipulation for a really great quote-unquote moments at the end of the match when he came back. And then that gave Daniel Garcia the opportunity to rally and then win the match himself and escape. Like, I thought that was really, really well done. And on the quiet over the last few weeks, especially with this association with FTR, they've given Daniel Garcia more than they gave him all the way, pretty much his entire A2P run up until the Continental Classic. Like, this is the strongest booking run Daniel Garcia has had, and they've, dare I say it, rehabbed him really well. Yes, maybe it happened on a show not many people saw, but they really have rehabbed him, and he's coming out of this feud, quote unquote, with a fair amount of credibility and a fair amount of spotlight. So
yeah,
good job, well done there too.
I think that was the thing. Like you, the stipulation made no sense because I did think, well, why don't all 6 men just run out of the ring as quickly as they fucking can? And it's a race to the floor for this as well. And if it had been elimination proper rules where you just pin people and they're eliminated from the match, so then it is like almost Survivor Series style. But
the only good one of them I ever saw was Austin Aries basically doing a suicide dive out of the cage door. It's like, yeah, that's what you should do. Like, just dive out. Like, you won. Over.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Done.
Just do it that way on there as well. But this was like, it was nicely batshit, and there was like that. I thought it just started off great with what they did, the spot with Mark Briscoe of throwing him onto like throwing him through the table like at the start straight away. I thought, okay, this is yeah. I thought it was like a really fucking good start in there as well. And you know, yeah, fucking Cash Wheeler jumping off the top of the cage as well. Yeah, the bumps outside onto the table, even if the Buddy Murphy one was very contrived for what they ended up doing in terms of like him going through the table as well on the outside. But it was notable that it feels like, yeah, we have let Daniel Garcia down. And it felt like they have managed to do enough of purging him away from Jericho, the Jericho verse. And my God, what a difference it makes. Having him with FTR, even having him with Mark Briscoe, just in terms of like a more serious kind of like grounded unit, is just a better stylistic choice for him in there. So even if he does his dancing, that the matches and stuff are actually going to be good enough for you to think, no, actually, this guy is a wrestler. He just has this dance that he likes to do, and he gets a reaction from some people.
I've still been there. I'll still get rid, but yeah. Oh, you beat the JP.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. The computer's decided to go schizo this time. But I thought the rehab job, like you said, is actually kind of good enough for the time being. And I want to see him pushed properly into that TNT title mix. I think that would be like one of the routes to go down. There's so many fucking mid-card titles that unfortunately you can go for in AEW. And so therefore, if you go for any particular one of them, it doesn't have any meaning. If they were doing what they would have done with, say, a Darby Allin at the very start of AEW when it was just the TNT title as well, then it would at least have some degree of meaning for it. Am I convinced they're going to stick through in it? It's like, you know, he said he's going to do his absolute utmost. And if you're doing rankings and everything else, there's a really great story with Daniel Garcia that they could be telling for the guts of 2024. I just don't have the faith that Tony Khan's going to remember a lot of this stuff in a few months' time, sadly. But yeah, as a match, I thought this was like, it felt like a nice sort of bookend to the feud. And if you are going to have shows where there's not going to be many people, you might as well just push someone fucking new for it. And it didn't appear like the crowd hated it as well. They were fully invested in there. So yeah, thought a really fun 4-star kind of like wild enough TV cage match. That was like a really good way to sort of round off a thoroughly decent episode of Collision.
you put any stock in the rumors that it did only exist for House of Black to refuse to lose? Dave Meltzer did say it on Observer Radio last night that has become an issue. Apparently, Buddy Matthews and Alistair Black / Malachi Black are very much wanting to head back to WWE, and it is notable to say that, like, pretty much since obviously the kickoff with Alistair Black and Malachi Black and him wanting to leave AEW, he really hasn't had any singles matches. Like, it's a stupid stat, like 2 years, something like that, since we've seen a proper singles match with him in AEW. And it's funny, I catch myself somewhere in the middle on these stories, because, like, on the one hand, as a low-key fan, I do enjoy when wrestlers take wins and losses seriously. I would rather there was more of that and wrestlers were bothered about winning or losing. But then it doesn't mean, I mean, and obviously there's wrestling promoters that deserve much more grief this week than Tony Khan, but it doesn't mean as a wrestling promoter you should put up with that. And I feel like if there is any truth to this, like, Tony Khan as a wrestling promoter probably does need to put his big boy pants on and be like, at the end of the day, mate, you're Tommy End. You're losing when I say you lose, and you're working the matches I say you're going to work. And especially if you're going back to WWE, you're probably not going to win any matches when you are on TV, or you can go home and I'll just ice your contract. I do feel a little bit like, I say, I'm a bit split on it. Maybe it's because it's someone I really don't like rather than someone I do like this time. But, like, as much as I almost applaud the wrestler, I think the wrestling promotion can't really let that fly, especially when it's somebody of Tommy Bellen's standard.
And also in that group, who's the person who looks like they have the most sort of star appeal? It's Brody King. So as long as you don't lose him, the other two, they can go. Because I think the thing with AEW was, for a long time, I often thought, I'd be interested if they sign him. If they sign him, they could do something really interesting with him. And then we had a whole spate of those, kind of like they sign these dream people. And guess what? They don't like to lose, which means you're really restricted now. You can push them, which means they exist on TV every once in a while, and then they fuck off for a little while as they're injured or something else is up or they're not happy. We saw it with Andrade. We saw it with Tommy Bellend. We've seen it with, Miro as well. I don't know. I almost put Keith Lee into the same kind of category. And I go, do you know what? I've seen it and it's not really worked. It's not appeared how I thought it could have been in my head of how this situation could have worked. So you're just better off cutting loose. I think at that stage and having that more, it gives you an opportunity to have that bit more of a streamlined roster with a few kind of fresher faces. If Andrade going back to WWE, I kind of look and go, am I missing him in AEW? No. I'd almost forgotten he was there within a couple of weeks of, like, losing that match at World's End. It's just like, oh, he's gone, hasn't he? When he turned up at the Rumble.
We didn't even talk about him in the Rumble, really, did we? No. It was just like he was there again. He was there and he left again. Unless they put him back with Zelina Vega, there's nothing happening there.
No. There's nothing happening there at all. If Malachi Black goes, I couldn't give a shit, I think, at this stage. If Buddy Matthews goes, I could give even less of a shit. Don't get me wrong. I think Buddy Matthews is a really good wrestler. But you know what he isn't? He's a star. And guess what they already have? Loads of really good professional wrestlers. So do you really need him? No. And if he's not happy to be there, let him go. You're not actually losing anything. And in many ways, you trim down your bill. You trim down the wages and go, do you know what? We don't actually need him. There are other spots for other people who are kind of more interesting characters, let's be honest. That House of Black group is just sort of treading water. I mean, I said Brody King is the star of the group. Julia Hart is the star of the group. It's her and Brody King, the two non-WWE, ex-WWE members of the group who are there the most interesting. Go with them in different directions. Go with Brody King as an absolute fucking killer monster. And I'm much more intrigued by that than I am anything else those other two lads can go. And it's the same thing with Miro. I just think it's at the point where it's like, I don't enjoy watching shows where I just think this person doesn't want to lose, because it's almost like, why are they involved in wrestling then? This is completely the wrong fucking industry. They should be doing MMA if they fancy themselves.
It's the right industry in the 80s, mate.
Oh, yeah.
And the 90s. Some of our favourites of all time have been in those positions.
But I think
should be more like that, in my opinion.
Yeah. But I think this is the thing. It's like they're not going to be missed. So, like, in many ways, I'd be like, for them, if they went tomorrow, I think within about less than a month, I'd forget they were there at all. House of Black. They're not even like kind of like a really good entrance either.
No. And maybe, Malachi Black. Alistair Black ended up back in WWE on the Triple H presentation. It might be better for him as well. Go back to like coffin entrance and all that NXT law. Maybe everyone will get what they want at the end of the day. I certainly won't miss them either. But yeah, that was what was coming out of Collision. Dynamite this week's got a Hangman Page versus Toa Leona. As we continue to build up wins for Page and Swerve Strickland, who's going to be facing opponents of Hangman Page's choice. So Swerve has chosen Toa Leona, so Hangman's going to choose someone for Swerve. Do we know who that is yet? I don't think they've.
Apparently, Rob Van Dam.
Oh, he did. He teased that, didn't he? That it was going to be Rob Van Dam. Oh, okay then. Fair enough. Swerve Strickland working all his childhood heroes: Jeff Hardy, Rob Van Dam. Sabu next, who else could they dust off from ECW? Bring back Kid Cash, maybe it can be him next. Who knows? Jerry Lynn dust off the boots. Taya Valkyrie versus Deonna Purrazzo is on the show as they continue the slow build of Deonna Purrazzo that they've been doing a good job of. We always said Jordan and Deonna belonged in bigger places, and we're kind of gotten that this week. And straight off the speaking of the cruise from Succession, straight off another maligned cruise, Chris Jericho and Kyle Fletcher is apparently on Dynamite because we can't go a week or a couple of weeks. Just if you told me he was still at sea, I would have believed you. He doesn't need to be back on Dynamite, but. There we go. That's happening there, and potentially Mercedes Moné, JP. Because she might. This might be the week. This might be the week it happens. She might come back. She might land in AEW. To be fair, now that she wasn't in the Rumble, I'm more confident that these reports might end up being true.
This is the thing. I thought now she's not in the Rumble. Now I'm more inclined to believe these rumors. Do I think it'll be this week? I want to. Where are they running this week? Where are they in the middle of fucking nowhere? Because if they are, don't debut her this week. If you're going to debut her, you might as well wait.
So. There'll be a Boston date they'll make, or it'll be a pay per view, or something Revolution. Like that coming up.
Revolution will have a big buy rate because of the Sting stuff on there anyway. You might as well just wait until then. Really, I think that's the best. That's the best way to go.
Definitely. Anything more on AEW? You got another note here. Megan Bain is not with AEW soon.
Another Stardom. She's had a very brief run in Stardom. She is. I mean, she's got certainly a bit of size to her as well. Like she's very, very tall, but she has finished up with Stardom. That was January 21st.
Oh, she's the one who signed, and then it hasn't been on actual AEW TV. They sent it on. It's like a weird. It's basically what they should have done with Nick Wayne on like a weird excursion, wasn't she? I remember.
Yeah. I think so, and I think if they were going to bring her in again, I wonder if they were going to bring her in as a kind of like female enforcer for Toni Storm. That feels like a kind of a role of a natural fit to be able to hide her as well. Again, they'll bring up some Joshi law as they have done with loads of stuff with as they did with Deonna Purrazzo and Toni Storm as well. So it would kind of tie into that, and I could see her getting involved to prevent Deonna from beating Toni Storm for the title. That feels like the kind of stuff that we're going to end up with there. Is she any good from what I've seen? She's kind of green. She doesn't seem particularly great. Anything else, I won't get my high hopes up in there. But again, this is the AEW women's division for you. You throw shit at a wall and you see what sticks. And she's just another example of that. Whereas Queen Aminata is the person I want to be fucking getting behind. Just saying.
Well, moving on from there, a couple of quick news notes from the week. I haven't seen Impact this week, but Mustafa Ali did show up. I saw the main event with the Okada trios match. It was kind of the novelty of seeing Okada there is kind of gone now that again, a year's worth of news has come out in the last few weeks, and since they taped it, he's leaving New Japan. I was impressed that they did note on the commentary that he was, his previous run in TNA and how it had gone, and that he wasn't treated the right way, and now he was back to exercise those demons. It was interesting to see them acknowledge that. Interesting to see him kiss the TNA mat. Outside of that, it was all right as far as like 6-man matches go. But yeah, the biggest thing out of it, and when Matty was reading the results out on the weekend show, I hadn't. Because it wasn't in the spoilers. I was completely caught off guard that Mustafa Ali appeared. So I did see the vignette. I don't know if it was my YouTube or TNA-ing, but he was cutting his like punchline at the end of it, and it my YouTube just skipped to the next video. So I don't know whether they cut off the last 3 seconds or not on the YouTube version. But it was a good promo package. It was good, and like, yeah, the exact right place for Mustafa Ali to land, I would say. Impact, both good for him and good for them.
He's doing the right thing here. I'm intrigued. He's not exclusive though, and obviously he's saying it's part of his world tour as well. This election thing I don't quite get, but like I say, it didn't appear in the spoiler, so it took me by surprise that he was coming in there. But it feels like very much like, you know, to bring him up from earlier on when Cody was in Impact very, very briefly as part of like, I'm a freelancer, I've got a select amount of dates. Do you want to bring me in? And they won't do anything to like, you know, put a major title on or anything else, but you get to use somebody who's kind of like hot on the indies. And, you know, I think that's really good for him. And especially as well, because of the determination of him to have good matches and to kind of make that name for himself, that you think, you know, yeah, this is a good idea while TNA is somewhat hot. And I know the viewing figures have been pretty decent, around that 100,000 range for the last couple of shows, which for them is kind of great. Whether or not they get any residual benefit of people want to watch after Jordan Grace being in the Royal Rumble, we don't know. But him going there, I think that's, you know, it's a much bigger move than, say, TNA Explosion being returning and being free on YouTube, Benno. I'm not sure necessarily whether or not that's going to be the turning point for TNA. But they're trying. Wasn't there a load of people backstage as well? There was all sorts of stories going around. I know Sean Spears has been around there as well. So it looks like they're in the middle of roster refresh time, aren't they? But Mustafa Ali, getting him in, he's a thoroughly good pickup. But I reserve the right to say that it's not worked at all, because I'm not. This political stuff is the bit that I think, I don't know, like timing's a bit off, because the election is until fucking November. So.
Yeah, that chemical, maybe it'll work then. Only other news notes I've got. We've got no other show reviews to squeeze in at the end. Apparently, Hiromu was re-signed with New Japan. Any quick thoughts on that? Hopefully, they promised him a lot. Promised him a heavyweight run and a lot more money. Hopefully, he hasn't re-signed just to continue to be junior heavyweight Hiromu going forward.
I think that is the interesting side of it as well, because you wouldn't have blamed him for leaving. Okada leaving, other people being off, never being moved out of the juniors, always having a kind of restriction on there. Him in the heavyweight division would add something. We saw it very fleetingly in what feels like 10 years ago during the New Japan Cup when they did that, which I'm sure was that the COVID one that they had done, and they had him in there and he had like a really good run. Decent and you're like, decent run. You think that this is what you need to do. And I would hope that's the case. If they're signing him up, of going, actually, why don't we just go with him? You talk about all the people who could replace Okada and these three young lads, and you go, well, here's Hiromu, who's a bit of a wild card to push in there, and it feels very much like, you know, he's not the fashionable person of what he was like a few years ago, when it felt like here's a guy who was kind of like feeling like he was becoming what should have become like a New Japan main eventer, and then that element of fucking staleness that they love in New Japan sort of came through and restricted it there. So I'm quietly optimistic, because I think he would have had a better bargaining chip this time round and just gone, look, how exactly are you going to be using me? Rather than, well, this is where I train, so I better sign the dotted line. I'm not going to ask any questions whatsoever about how they book me. I'm hoping to God that there is the conversation of like, yeah, I want to wrestle in the heavyweight division, and I'm not going to sign this contract unless you do that. I need to get out of this junior ghetto, which is just not going anywhere. And you think of it, just how he's just a bloke who wears wacky fucking jackets at this point. Like, you know, like put him in the heavyweight division, give him some fucking stakes, trust me, because those crowds out there, they love him and they'll really react. So, I mean, that would be the hope if they were going to go, okay, we're going to sign you and we're going to push you. And I think you might get a surprising bit of juice out of that. And let's face it, have him beat Naito if you wanted to go that way. Makes sense storyline-wise. LIJ law, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Love that stuff. And then they'll be saying, Kazuchika who? No idea. And they've forgotten all about him.
Oh well, yeah. There you go. That's the end of the show. There. That's a heavy week in wrestling news. Let's hope next week is a quieter week. Lead story right now on the docket, I think, is going to be that NXT show. So Let's hope it stays that way into February. But yeah, February will be a new month over on the Patreon, the YouTube, and such. So yeah, we'll have the schedule out towards the end of the week as well. Iron Claw Film Club coming for patrons and YouTube members later in the week. If you are watching the replay on YouTube, you can watch us live, usually Tuesday nights, sometimes Mondays, as we found the last couple of weeks. When you duck down there, it looks like I'm just chatting to Triple H. Love it. It's like we got him on the podcast as a guest. But yeah, you'll be able to get that over on the Patreon and the YouTube as well. So yeah, do check out our Iron Claw Film Club coming at the end of the year. But yeah, anything else, JP?
No, that's it. All I want to say is patreon.com/grapple. Like I say, that Alan, that Iron Claw. Sorry, my mic was designed to go haywire and go.
Yeah, I'm just gone really loud now. Sorry, I'll take you down on the other.
just gonna disconnect itself for no real reason other than we're past midnight, and that's just how shit rolls. So I don't quite understand how that's happened. And I'm sorry if that's been going on for absolutely ages as well. I'm assuming it bloody well has. I'm fucking annoyed about that, to be honest with you. But there we go. Yeah. Patreon.com/grapple. Looking forward to Iron Claw, which we're going to be watching during the week on Wednesday. So yeah, going to get the review up there straight away as well. And then we've got the weekend show at the weekend, and then we've got a whole new month with Dealer's Choice. So like loads of really cool stuff coming up.
There you go. So yeah, look forward to that, patrons and YouTube members. But yeah, everybody else, we'll catch you again. Spotlight should be back to Tuesday next week. Like I say, let's hope for a quiet one, but it is wrestling. It probably won't be. But anyway, go for it, folks. Have a great week, and we'll catch you again next Tuesday night.
Bye.
Good night, all.